Is the stage being set for us being the problem when it comes to He-Man? We're going to talk about that and a lot more when it comes to entertainment news with Kamran Pasha, the one and only, on Midnight's Edge in the morning. Good morning, everybody. Our member, Snail's Messiah, says, I'm here, you can start now. So we're going to start now because Snail Messiah is here. Welcome, everybody in the chat. How are you doing? My name is Tom Connors. With me, as always, is the boss man, Andre. How are you?
I am excellent, thank you. It's a lovely Wednesday, and we have a lot to talk about. And we are talking about all of those things with the one and only Kamran Pasha.
Greetings. You're on mute.
I'm on mute. Okay, so perfect. Well, thank you guys, and it's always an honor to be on. You're the only channel I'll get up at 9 a.m. for. You're the only one. And
we really appreciate
no one else. Everyone else gets
so we make sure that you wake up at 9 a.m. as often as possible, including days when you're not supposed to be on.
You train my body. It's all good. Well, I'm excited for today. We haven't been on in a few weeks, so it's nice to be back on with you guys.
Yes, exactly. It is nice indeed. And it's also nice to see so many of you here. We have Fat Elvis in the room. That's a nice name. Who says, good morning, Tom, Andre, and Kamran. Yes, indeed. Good morning. Fleetwood Matt says, what's up, Kamran? Fractal Jack also says, hail, Kamran. So lots of love here. Tim Hayes. Also, get up before 9 a.m. for this channel, which we really, really appreciate. But of course, it's not everyone. Darth Steinese says that it's 10 minutes past 5 p.m. at his present location, which means I'm guessing that he must be in the UK somewhere. And Thomas also says, welcome from Amsterdam, a place we all look forward to getting back to. And Vorpal Bunny's Revenge points out that muted Pasha is not the best Pasha. No, Pasha is the best Pasha.
The industry keeps trying to mute me, and I'm still here. I just mute myself by accident every now and then, so.
Yes, and all. And we also have Natasha, our ever-loyal wrench, who is happy about the mention of Amsterdam, and Sailor Sonic 78 wants me to send a shout-out to which, of course, is always a pleasure.
Speaking of, we actually got a super chat from the lovely how'd I do?
Yeah, not too bad.
Not too bad? Not too bad. I've been practicing all night.
Well, fine. You did good then, if that makes you feel better. Can you bring that one up on screen?
I'm trying to find it. Let's see. We got one from Hyperguyver here, but I can't find that one. I think it may have went past me already. Hang on.
Well, then I'll find it in the classic ones.
Unless it was after this one.
Now, Hyperguyver 2 says for $10, only in Hollywood can you insult your audience, make bad products, not make a profit, and blame someone else when it fails. It's time they suffer the consequences. Actually, I would like to interject that you can do that 2 more places. You can do it in government, and you can do it in real high-end banking with government ties. You can do exactly those things there as well. But beyond those 2, it's Hollywood. Or
because finance and Hollywood, just like finance and politics, it's all part of the same club.
Yeah. Indeed it is.
Yeah, that's what I've said before, is like there's only the 3 main places, Hollywood, corporate America, and Washington, where a lot of these problems are.
It's the feudal aristocracy. That's all this is. Yeah. I mean, it's just different versions of the feudal aristocracy. That's all.
Ewan Waffle says you should make Kamran pasta. Kamran Pasha. There you go.
I eat pasta. I'm not a huge pasta fan.
I know, but hey, it makes money. And Super Chat said, hello, gents, but I can't bring it up. And she sent us a
You know, I thought M was a guy for the longest time, but apparently he's quite a lovely lady, and you know I've got a thing for lovely ladies. So my apologies to M, and I'm glad you're a lovely lady. It's good to know.
Oh, I'm sure we can have you on at some point. We had her on last Friday, okay. and she frequently streams with Robert Meyer Burnett. I was on with both him and her for.
Bring her on today.
Yeah, I'm jealous. She gets to spend more time with him than I do anymore.
Yeah. Well,
since this is going to be a sausage fest, bring RM on today.
Well, if has the opportunity, I can send you the link in a little while here. So yeah. And then Stephen, then SP became a new YouTube member. So welcome to that. That's
we apologize.
Always awesome. And yeah, no, well. We have some awesome bonus content here, so yeah, do check.
Just ask D. Bud Martin. It's yeah. No, we love all our members. We have member streams. In fact, we probably have another one coming up here pretty soon. I know I'll be doing something for me eventually too, and we do try to cross you guys over. So don't worry if you're a member of one channel or the other. We try to make sure you all get a chance to benefit from our special streams and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we also have one from Brightest Day here who says, "Hail Midnight's Edge and Papa Pasha. How you doing?"
Nice.
Is that what we're going to call him from now on? Is Papa Pasha? I don't know.
Well, we have. I prefer Kamran the Seer.
Yeah, I like that better.
Woodwood says for $2.99. Hey all and greetings, badass MF Kamran Pasha the Seer. Yeah, okay. yeah. That's it's something that Samuel L. Jackson would say.
It's what my wallet says.
Yeah.
I just want my wallet back.
We should get. I saw a super chat by Willie Woodward. He asked a question about Sam Raimi, which I certainly have an answer to. So,
from yesterday, not yesterday, but the day
before.
No,
from minutes ago.
It's still coming up. Okay,
yeah,
we haven't got that far yet.
Yeah, I'll see if we can get to it. Yeah.
Willie's a great writer. You know, he's been a writing client of mine. He's really talented guy. So everyone keep an eye out for him.
Thomas Plummer asks, "How are there 5 downvotes? They aren't even done with introductions yet." Well, there's plenty.
No, it's me. My show.
Well, guys, let's be real, Cameron. There's plenty of blue-haired Landwells, red-haired harpies, and all kinds of idiots out there, soy boys, and all that shit. So I'm sure we get a few of them. You got to come on and downvote us just to help the algorithm. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. So everyone that downvotes, that's perfectly fine. Just leave a comment and tell us why. And then Willie Woodwood asked, Kamran, do you have any Sam Raimi stories? So let's start with that before we get into the main story of the day. Let's just warm up mildly with Sam Raimi before we get into Kevin Smith and He-Man.
So I'll make it short. It's a fascinating story of how, and it's an example of how many times I've come right into the heart of the club that I talk about, and then I'm back out, right? And you know, it's this fascinating. So I have this project that's a very, very important project to me personally. It's a pilot I wrote about the Moors, about Moorish Spain, set in the last 10 years of El Andalus. You know, it's the war between Ferdinand and Isabella versus the last Moorish Sultan of Spain, right? And so it's called Andalus. It's something I'm very, very proud of. And that project has had many A-list directors come, and then somehow the industry pushes them back out, right? Here's a story of one of them. So when I first wrote the project, it was sold to Universal Television, and the executive producer on there is Lawrence Bender, who, if anyone knows who that is, he's a multiple Oscar-nominated producer who produced Pulp Fiction. He was Quentin Tarantino's partner for many years. Produced all of Tarantino's work until very recently, and then did produce Good Will Hunting and all these other big movies that you know. Okay, so Lawrence fell in love with the script, and because of who he is, he was able to get around to A-list directors very easily. Just called them and said, "Hey, you want to take a look at this?" And so this is what happened with that. We had been interested in sending the script to Sam Raimi, and then a series of strange synchronicities happen. So Lawrence sends the script to Sam Raimi's production company, and then I think 2 days later he was going to be at some kind of one of the he's very active in the Democratic Party and he's at some fundraiser or that kind of thing, right? And midnight that night, on a Saturday night, I get a phone call from Lawrence's partner, Kevin Brown, who's a very close friend of mine. Lawrence's partner calls me, and Kevin calls me at midnight. I'm like, why is this guy calling me at midnight on Saturday night? I mean, at this point, I just met them maybe a few weeks ago before. I didn't have a deep relationship yet. So it's like, why is he calling me at midnight? He calls me, he's like, you're not going to believe what just happened. So Lawrence is at this large fundraiser. There's probably like, 700, 800 Hollywood big shots at this thing, kind of big ballroom kind of thing, right? And he's there, and it's all randomly assigned seating, big famous people with famous people. And it just so happened that he was seated right next to Sam Raimi, who he had been wanting to look for and talk about. Hey, have you read that script we sent you yet? And so they were seated there. And he said, the moment we sat down, Sam said to us, like, who the hell is Kamran Pasha? This is direct quote from Cam. He was like, who the hell is this guy? I've never heard of this guy. And he's like, you sent me that script 2 days ago. I just read it. This is the best thing I've ever read. I mean, I didn't hear this. This is Kevin Brown saying this to me, calling me at midnight to say this. He's like, and then he said they spent the entire night talking about this project because Sam was hyped. I was like, I want to do this. Project about the Moors. I mean, it'll be the Latino Game of Thrones, which is what it is. And this is something that it's just, I'm really connected to the writing. And and he said, who is this guy? I mean, someone who writes like this, I should know who he is. How come I don't know who he is? I'm like, well, I wish I knew the answer to that too. But that's what Sam Raimi said. So we were all very excited. Universal, on Monday, we emailed Universal and said, Sam Raimi read the script. He wants to do it. He loves it, blah, blah, blah. There's this weird synchronicity that they were both seated at the same table. So they spent the whole night talking about it. So it's clearly a cosmic destiny thing, right? So I'm like, hey, I broke through the club at last. And then Sam Raimi has a partner, who is very well known from the good old days of Xena and Hercules and all of that. Rob Tapert, right? And I've had some interactions with Rob subsequently. So Rob didn't appreciate, I think, that we didn't, he sees himself as sort of the gatekeeper to Sam, and I don't think he appreciated that we sent the script to Sam directly without consulting him or sharing it with him, and so initially, Rob had sent emails to Universal saying, this is a great script, and Sam's really excited about it, and let's set a call, and let's formally attach Sam Raimi, and then we're going to go out with this pilot. Sam hadn't done television in years; he'd become a big movie guy, and so he hadn't been doing TV, and this would be a chance to bring Sam back at a major pilot, epic scale. So I'm like, this is it, we're done. So about 2 days, just a week later, we set for the call with Sam Raimi and everybody. It was a formal call with Universal Studios. So he's going to attach himself, and we're going to make the deal with him and everything. And then, like 24 hours before that call, I suddenly get an email saying, "Yeah, you got to take a look at this." And it's a forwarded email from Rob, who basically had changed his tone within 1 week. From this is one of the best scripts I've ever read, and Sam's really excited about it, and we're glad. So he's like, it's not really that good a script, and I don't really know who Kamran Pasha is. So I've told Sam I don't want to be involved in this project. And so Sam doesn't do anything without Rob's involvement. So suddenly Sam backs out. And we're like, what just happened here? Right? I mean, what happened? And we never found out the answer to that. This would happen again about 3 more times. With A-list director, Sam is an incredible director. There's people much more famous than him that then got involved in this project, including someone who has 2 Oscars, right? And the same thing happened. After they got involved, a week later, we got this thing like, yeah, they're backing out of this project. So the general vibe we were getting is that people were telling them, you don't want to be doing a project with a Muslim hero and about Muslims defeating, or not, they were defeated by, or at least fighting the Spaniards, right? And you definitely want to do a project about a time when the Muslims had this very progressive culture, right? That isn't part of Hollywood's story about that religion and that culture. So you don't want to talk about the glories of Spain. It was something that was some kind of trigger for people in the industry. So every time A-list people would get involved, the cord would get cut. And this happened several more times. With people that increasingly got more famous because Lawrence is like, what do you mean you don't want to do it? Well, I'll just take it to this even more famous person because he's incredibly connected, right? And each time we would be like, oh my God, multiple Oscar winner just said, I want to do this. Oh, multiple Oscar winner just said he's backing out without explanation. So that's my Sam Raimi story, and hope that gives you insight about how the industry works, how even people, first of all, it's about these relationships. Sam wouldn't do it without Rob, and Rob backed out for reasons that remain mysterious, and that happened again and again. So I hope that reveals something about how the industry works, about its internal politics, how the club doesn't like letting people in, and certainly there's certain topics that the club doesn't want to put out there because it's shaping the narrative about culture. And certain topics, people are told, you don't want to be doing this because I'll change the narrative that we've got on this topic. And so if even the most powerful people become afraid of being linked to something that might get them outed from the club. So that's my story, which I think might reveal something about how culture works in Hollywood. So it's not a great story, but it is what it is.
Well, exactly. It is what it is, and it's reality. And then Javier Rios just says, hello, everyone. New subscriber here. Well, welcome to the channel, Javier. Pleasure to have you. And then we're going to run through a couple of more super chats here before we get into the main stories of the day. They're going to be a little bit out of order, and we are going to get through every single one in the end. But now I'm just doing the ones that I can get up on screen first. And we evidently have someone new in Stephen Barrera Cat, who wonders, where is Andre from? Love the accent. Oh, thank you.
He's from Texas. Totally from Texas, can't you tell?
Yeah, totally Texan accent.
He's from the South. I'll say the South.
I was just in sort of the South. I was in Missouri this weekend, and it's sort of the South, sort of the Midwest. I mean, that is a nice state. And there's a lot of lovely ladies in Missouri. I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is a really attractive state.
I have to go there sometime. The true answer, though, is Norway. So, yeah, that's the answer to that. And then some more super chats out of order here that I can bring up on screen. Josh Leek says for $10, thank you so much. If Netflix Masters of the Universe fails along with the failure of She-Ra, do you believe that this will be it for Masters of the Universe and we won't see He-Man for a long time? Or do you think they will beat a dead horse, making it worse? First, I just want to point out that She-Ra, it's very difficult to argue that it wasn't at least partially successful because it made it all the way to, 7 seasons, I think?
For what?
The original She-Ra?
The She-Ra series. Yeah,
No.
the DreamWorks She-Ra series.
Only one season.
No. Oh, no. It's much more than one season.
I think it was more than one season.
Oh, yeah. No. That's
a lot.
multiple. Yeah, I think it's 7 seasons or something. Let's do the checkery here. Like
5, I guess.
I mean, yeah. I watched it a lot because there's a hot chick running around with a sword.
6, maybe. Oh, you mean this new one? Yeah.
Yeah, the new one, obviously.
Oh,
It's
I thought you
5
meant
seasons.
the original. Oh, well, that doesn't mean shit because a season on Netflix is 10 episodes, if that.
It's 52
Yeah,
episodes.
and Netflix, if you get more
I
than
said
one
there's
season-
still, I think, more original episodes in the original first season, only season of She-Ra. I thought you were talking about
Yeah, this is
Filmation.
true because there's 73 episodes of the original She-Ra divided across two seasons. But still, I think that this iteration of He-Man will be lucky to get as many episodes and even seasons as this one.
I mean, it's probably unlikely. Even just because where the industry is, like I said,
I think Revelations is a one-off. I think Revelations is supposed to be a one-off anyway.
No, it isn't. It's supposed to. No. It's not a one-off. I mean, the first batch of stories, yeah, but then the goal is to carry on with more seasons if it's successful.
Well, that's
Who the fuck wants the Tila show?
Yeah, never mind that. The point is that they do want to carry on with more seasons if it is successful. But anyway, do you think what happens if it fails? What do you guys think is going to happen then? Is that all she wrote for He-Man Forevermore, or will they try to get some more out of it?
It's all she wrote for about 10 years, because this industry recycles everything every decade, right? We
still have that child-friendly animated show, which Netflix is also developing that we haven't seen anything more of, but that's also happening, the 3D series.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see. I think it's likely to not succeed to the level that they wanted to, based on some of the things we're going to talk about in today's episode. But I think it'll come back because Hollywood is bankrupt in the sense that they're creatively bankrupt. All they do is they go back to old stuff. That's all they know how to do, right? And so I think that there's a lot of people of this generation, sort of my generation, who are still hopefully going to be working in 10 years, who are going to try to, after they see it not do properly, they're going to try to push the correct version, sort of what Jon Favreau is doing at Star Wars. He's from the generation that understood and enjoys Star Wars. He's trying to put it back on track. And I think people, if this new He-Man stuff world fails, which seems likely, then I think you have to wait a few years for somebody who's like, well, man, there's no reason for it to fail. This was such a good show. I loved it as a kid. And hopefully that person in a few years will be powerful enough to resurrect it properly, like Favreau has done with Star Wars.
Yeah, fingers crossed. In the meantime, HyperGyver2 says, speaking of clubs and culture, did you guys hear that the anime studios are making it clear that the West will have no input on future anime projects? Now, these would be like the Japanese companies that the West is trying to have influence over, trying to say that you have to be more diverse. Like, it's too problematic the way you are right now.
The Japanese don't strike me as people. The Japanese don't strike me as people that can be bullied. They lost the war and they still kept their culture, right? And they managed to survive and to become a successful society after a pretty horrific war in which they were nuked, right? They just don't strike me as people that they will adopt things that they like they'll take American baseball and stuff like that, stuff that works for them. But I just don't think they're people that they just are interested in having their culture changed by an external force.
Yep. Then moving on here and see which super chats we can get up on screen here. Master Clockwork says She-Ra was a failure in Mattel's eyes. The amount of episodes Netflix approved means nothing. No one made any money. Yeah,
well, Mattel had very little to really do with it.
Exactly, but Mattel had no say in the matter. Really, they had nothing to do with it because Mattel doesn't own either the He-Man or the She-Ra brand anymore. So they have no vote and no say in the matter. It's not for them to decide.
Yeah, the reason it was produced by DreamWorks is because DreamWorks and Universal are one and the same.
Yeah, and they own it.
And DreamWorks actually has a animation division, I believe is the reason why, but yeah.
Yeah.
And then we also have Daniel sending in $2, says, or the attempt to fix Ghostbusters. Oh, if you mean the 2016 movie, or I'm not sure which one you're referring to.
They've aggressively fixed Ghostbusters. They've erased that movie, and they seem to be
talking about that.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
And Hans Lolo says for €5, I get everybody is worried about Revelations, but watch out for that other He-Man show they're working on. That one will break the internet regarding woke. Do you know something we don't?
Send us more information because that sounds interesting. Whatever you're saying there. There's interesting implications. Yeah.
And Billy D wonders, any ETA on that documentary about the He-Man rights craziness? Next week.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah, best I can do.
Did we get this one?
No, we didn't get that one. And Michael Miller wonders, when is the club going to start axing marketing departments? And that actually segues really nicely into what we are about to talk about.
I think we're going to talk about that today in much more detail.
Well, marketing departments are the fucking problem with everything.
Yes, they are indeed. And to everyone that sent super chats, we are going to get to every single one of them by the end here. But right now, we are going to get into the main stories of the day. Now, Tom, if you can try to bring up the first one on screen, the one from Gizmondo.
Gizmondo?
Gizmondo, yeah. Because they put up quite the story here last week. Actually, it just escaped my attention until I started looking for Sarah Michelle Gellar in a completely different context in conjunction with an editorial that should be released later today with any luck. And
boy, you have a lot of faith.
Well, one can hope.
Anyway. Well, let's try and get the Spanish version of the last video to go through because the thing keeps freezing on me. So yeah, Windows updates, love it.
Yeah, but let's not worry about the Windows updates right now. Right now, focus is this, because it appears that this article from Gizmodo, and this is obviously something that is done in conjunction with Netflix marketing departments, hence why the previous Super Chat was such a good run-off point. This is trying to set up a narrative. Masters of the Universe, Sarah Michelle Gellar, she's the one that's voicing Tila, is hopeful about fan reactions to Revelation, with the byline, in an age where fans can be outraged over anything, the voice of Tila remains optimistic about He-Man's return. So already there, the stage has been set. It's taken for granted that fans are a fickle bunch, and they'll be outraged about anything. So why would they appreciate anything? And then the story begins. In Kevin Smith's Netflix sequel to the classic Masters of the Universe cartoon, Prince Adam's best friend Tila plays just as important a role as He-Man himself. It's a change, to be sure, and change is something 40-year-old nerds traditionally don't handle well when it comes to classic franchises of their youth. However, Sarah Michelle Gellar is positive that they'll be receptive towards this new series. Now, here right off the bat, I'd like to point out one thing. They say that Tila in the original series is Adam's best friend, while as here in this series, she's equal to He-Man. And that's a change, completely bypassing that in the original series, Tila was captain of the God, and she fought alongside He-Man all along. So it's not like a huge stretch. But they
were friends in that, so I don't know what they're trying to imply here. They were best friends in that thing, and everyone sort of wanted.
Tila was always basically the second most important character in the show. You had He-Man.
Everyone wanted them to hook up together, right? That was the whole.
Well, they did eventually, yeah.
I'd hook up with Tila.
Yeah. But anyway, the point to me here is it looks as though they are trying to paint a narrative that the old series wasn't progressive in any way, shape, or form. In the old series, Tila was just Adam's friend.
Can I interject you for a second? In fact, the original series, Tila is very demasculizing to Adam. The whole joke, the entire fucking joke is she thinks Adam's nothing but a little soy boy.
Mm-hmm.
And He-Man, on the other hand, makes her moist, right? But the joke is she don't realize they're one and the same. It's the Superman thing. It's like how Lois is so dismissive of Clark, but without realizing that Superman's right underneath her nose.
Yeah, but beyond that, and here's the point that I want to make here, is that this article paints a picture of the old series as there she was just a friend. She was just eye candy. Now she's a warrior, and that's a huge change. But actually, that is not the change. She's always been a warrior. Yeah, I know, but this article isn't trying to explain.
Yeah, what they're doing is they're creating a false history, like everything else that we're living through. There's an imagined history that you then fix. Whereas
maybe that would be fixed if they actually watched the original series, like Kevin Smith should have.
Well, but you see, this is broader, and maybe it gets us into the conversation about this thing.
No, I get you.
Yeah, but we are now in this situation that we've been going through for about 5 or 6 years, where you have a generation of people that are revved up on revolution and making the world a better place. And but since his history has been erased, maybe from their school teachers, so they don't know what the world was like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and the progress that was made to address many of the issues that they're talking about today. They're not even aware of it. So in order to satisfy them in their belief that they're going to fix a broken world, they have to pretend things that were fixed were never fixed. Right? And they have to go back and create a history that's false, where you never had strong female characters, you never had African American leads, right? You never had any of that, and that there was no breakthroughs in any of these issues. There was no breakthroughs in and we're going to talk about this as well, in LGBT representation. That never happened. It all has to be done now because none of that ever happened. Otherwise, you have a generation with nothing to do that's been told it's here for a revolution, but the revolution happened in Generation X. Our generation did the revolution, right? And now they're left with these kids who are like, well, we got to fight for something, so we'll just pretend Generation X didn't do anything.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I see right here. They're trying to rewrite history and pretend that Tila's role in the original is something that it wasn't. And it's not a matter of them not having seen the series. This is something that they appear to do willingly, because I have seen more articles that say the same thing, that the original series was just for the boys. It was a boys' club show.
Girls love
Completely
Tila.
inaccessible to anyone else.
I remember girls in my like 6th grade class would walk with lunchboxes with Tila on them.
Indeed.
Well, and She-Ra was popular enough as well, but we've seen this history already. She-Ra was kind of what brought Masters of the Universe to a dead halt back in the day. And again, now I'm not saying that boys aren't more progressive nowadays than they were then, but to call the show itself unprogressive, it's not only it's lies, pure lies, but the show I would argue that He-Man, of all those shows back in the day that had in this episode we learned this, because that's what they had to do to get past certain parental groups and shit like that. And He-Man had some of the better ones as far as I'm concerned. Like, a lot of the other ones are pretty tangentially connected to whatever was going on in the episode. At least He-Man, it seemed like they had a lot of lessons, and Tila was one of the ones who was always learning shit. So was Orko and stuff like that. And Tila in the show was one of the main characters, and we knew early on what her legacy was. And that was another thing, is we knew more about her than she did. And granted, that's what we were saying from the start. This show could do that. It could show us that thing. But instead, the trailer's showing us something that she's not. It's showing her become more of a man-at-arms character when that's not her legacy. I mean, yeah, she's able to do that, but that's not what she's here for. I think is the point I'm getting to. And this whole series is going to take forever to get to that point, and it's going to destroy the characters in the process, is what I feel is going to happen.
Well, and it's especially if they're aiming for a new generation that doesn't know these characters, doesn't sound like they have anything special to offer them to make them interested in these characters. So.
No, because we all know her legacy is she's the daughter of the sorceress. She was adopted by Man-at-Arms and protected. Yeah. So nobody knew who she was. So that when the time is right, she will take her place in Castle Grayskull as the new sorceress.
Yeah. And hold on, I'm gonna mute for a second.
Oh, yeah, that's Netflix coming after us.
Yeah, and I still remember one of the episodes, the thing when we learned that, and there's this moment where Sorceress tears up because she can't tell her, right? I remember tearing up as a kid watching that episode where this is her daughter and she can't tell her.
It's one of the best episodes of Masters of the Universe ever.
Yeah.
Because it is in that top 10 that I was talking about. There's a set out there that the fans voted on the top 10 Masters of the Universe episodes, and that's amongst them. And yeah, it is a pinnacle episode in the series. And like Andre said, that season set up a lot of stuff for She-Ra as well, as far as going forward. And all these He-Man has had a lot of strong female characters throughout. Not to mention the sorceress, Tila. Yeah. Evil Lynn, as I always mention, is far superior to Skeletor in whether or not, in her magic and her cunning and all that kind of stuff. Because like at any time she's ready to just, toss Skeletor to the side and take over. Like that's her plan. And, again, it's like there's all these strong female characters. Even He-Man's mother is a very strong presence in the show, because they keep bringing up the fact that she's an Earthling and stuff like that. I wonder if they'll carry that over into this.
Well, maybe they're even aware of it.
That's what I'm saying. Is I doubt they're even aware of a lot of this history.
They don't know all the details and whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think Kevin Smith sees this as a joke of a project when it's actually something very meaningful to a generation.
Yeah,
it is,
and that is kind of what I'm thinking too. And this is one of the things that I wanted to ask you, Kamran, because this article from Gizmondo. Here, a very clear narrative is painted.
Oh yeah, I read the article. It's a very clear narrative. I mean, this guy's
there's two narratives that I can see here. One narrative is that the original series was complete dog pile. It's not worth at all. It's only the new one that's the true progressive, and now they're getting He-Man right. because now women are represented, whereas before it was just problematic. Now it's fixed. So that's one takeaway from it. The other is that the fans are horrible, horrible people. No, actually, the term used is crappy people. They literally describe the fans as crappy for not instantly embracing how progressive and inclusive and diverse this is. And their usual go-tos is Star Trek, Star Wars, and Ghostbusters. Those are the ones that they use as examples of how crappy fans can be.
Yeah. Well,
what's the purpose of putting these narratives out there?
Well, I went back and I looked at the articles written by this writer, Rob Bricken, who works there. And already it's interesting. This guy is such a, in my opinion, a tool, right? And I'm using that term. Don't sue me, Mr. Bricken. I'm using that. I'll explain what I mean. You're actually being used as a tool by the industry. So, but if you look at his bio, he even in his own bio on Gizmodo, he apologized for something he did. He says he had once had a news site called Topless Robot, which is a pretty good name for a news site in the sci-fi world, right? And he's like, I'm sorry for having a poorly named. That's in his bio, that this was a poorly named thing. And he's embarrassed by website because now he's canceling himself, right? So we already know what this character is. He's this, this cancel culture warrior who's pre-canceling himself, right? So that's how silly this guy is. But, he's clearly the example of we've seen a certain gentleman at Forbes has been accused of being an instrument, a tool of certain people at Lucasfilm, and I get the impression this gentleman is a tool of the marketing team of behind the current He-Man, and he's expressing, he's got a bunch of these articles. He's got a bunch of articles on He-Man. Like it's just a whole slew of them. So it's like, are you obsessed with this man, or is this kind of your like gig? You're doing this, right? If it feels like he's being fed stuff from the marketing department and he's putting it out there, which modern journalism, certainly in Hollywood, has become stenography. It's not journalism. It's literally it's like the trades. Gizmodo is acting like a trade. The trades just get press releases and literally put them out. Word for word. You can read an article on Deadline or Variety, and you can see it's literally a press release just published, right, from the studio without any critical analysis. And that's what this thing is. This thing is a marketing department spiel and a story they're putting out there in advance, probably because they know they already know what the audience response is going to be based on history of the last 5 years, but they don't know how to stop this train, so they're just going to put it out there.
And why would the marketing? Because ultimately, this comes from Netflix marketing. Why would they put this out there?
Well, I'm going to be careful what I say about Netflix because I might be about to put a pilot in front of them. But I will say this. I think Netflix, is very much, the current generation is very much adopting and I say current generation, it's only been a couple of years since they've had some changes in their executive structure. But, where their Netflix is right now, I think they're very much thinking that their goal being to get as many subscribers as possible. That's the only goal here for Netflix. It's not to make content even. It's to literally get more subscribers and using content to get more subscribers. So they think that if they can, utilize this tactic, it's going to excite the woke crowd to subscribe to Netflix. It's part of the reason I think that they were marketing that cuties thing so poorly last year, right? They thought they were going for, I guess in that case, a particular segment, a part of the creepy segment of the population, just to get them to subscribe. I don't think it's going to work that way because I don't think that the people they're aiming for with this kind of marketing push are going to watch He-Man anyway. They weren't going to watch any version of it, including a woke version. They're just not interested in it.
How long before they catch on? Because here's like the thing. The beauty with this series, at least how it initially was marketed to the built-in audience, is that since this is animation, it only costs so much to make, meaning that we can actually do this as a proper sequel. Not like a legally valid one, but one where in every way that matters, this can be a follow-up. We can go all out. We don't have to make any considerations. And instead, they are seemingly doing every single modern ideopolitical move that you would fully expect in a huge live-action adaptation. why do they see fit to do this even in an animation, when by trying to bring in so many new people, probably aren't going to come anyway, the only thing that they achieve is probably alienating the people that were going to show up no matter what, the built-in audience. And here, that's the very audience they even call crappy.
They acknowledge this built-in audience, so they're aware of it. This is, I mean, the Brickens article acknowledges consistently that there's the old folks, the resentful old folks. It's like they're aware that these people, in previous iterations of this kind of strategy, they weren't even aware that there were these old folks. Like, I don't think Lucasfilm even thought that the older generation was going to watch this, so they could make up whatever they wanted, because we're all just a bunch of old folks. Remember, that's part of Hollywood ageism. Which I'm beginning to see now in my generation of writers. We all started off in our 20s and early 30s 20 years ago, right? And now I'm hearing more and more from my friends who are writers, they're not getting work anymore. Well, work has been given to 15, or not 15, sometimes 15, but we'll talk about 18, 19, 20, 23-year-old kids right out of college or whatever, and they're the new hot thing. And we were that, I guess, 20 years ago. Hollywood ageism is still very much a part of the industry structure. So they're not even thinking. I mean, the ageist attitude of this article is all about how these old, beer-bellied, broken people who watch He-Man in the 80s, it's pretty contemptuous. And yet they're at least acknowledging their existence, because the article feels like the last gasp of the woke crowd in the Hollywood system finally recognizing certain realities of the terrain. They're recognizing that there is this older generation that was invested in this thing. They didn't even recognize that before. Now they recognize that. And they recognize that generation doesn't share the values that they're propagating here. So they recognize that, right? And now they're also recognizing the third part, which is that's likely going to hurt them. So they're hoping, instead of letting go of this, because the train's already moving. I mean, Kevin Smith has announced what he wants to do with this. The train's already moving. And so they can't let go of it. So they now have to essentially try to rile up this customer base they hope exists by really differentiating that older generation with this new thing. And I don't think they're going to succeed in that. But part of the challenge is, Netflix we don't know who's going to watch the show. Netflix doesn't reveal its numbers, or whenever it does, you have to question the accuracy of them. So who knows what the viewership is going to be? Who knows what the subscription thing is? The biggest challenge is Netflix is overwhelmed with stuff. It's literally like a giant chaotic city of stuff that's happening. So this is just one thing that's happening there, right? And so they're just regurgitating certain phrases, because this is just one of 25 projects the marketing department is dealing with right now, and all of which are likely to not succeed. And all they need is one of those 25 projects to bring in enough subscribers, and that's it. And so they're just throwing darts at this point, and not even knowing where the dartboard is. They're just throwing them.
Yeah, and also I think that they may be giving some talking points to their cast, because what we're looking at right now, this is courtesy of Clownfish TV. They didn't find this, but they retweeted it. This is a picture from the print edition of Entertainment Weekly, and I do not think that this is something that comes from Sarah Michelle Gellar in her own right. I think this is something that she has been made to say. But in this piece, she says that she wasn't a fan of the original Masters of the Universe cartoon growing up. The women were afterthought characters. This, of course, is complete and total BS. But this is the narrative that's being put out there, and I think the studio are the ones doing
old enough. I mean, was she old enough to be? I mean, He-Man's what, 84, 85? Was she even around?
Well, it came out. The filmation was 83 to 85. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to look her up. I mean, Sarah Michelle Gellar. When was she born?
I think she's old enough to have seen it, but I'm not convinced that these comments are.
She would have been
from her.
She would have been 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah, old enough to remember.
Old enough to remember, but I don't.
You sure she wouldn't be older than that?
The official story is she's born in 77, so she would have been 6 years old in 83. So you never know anyone's age.
She was on Buffy in the 90s, right?
Yeah, so that's the official
Yeah,
thing.
well, the math still says that she would be 6 in 83,
Yeah.
and she would be like 10, 11 when it went off the air completely.
Yeah, and she's old enough to have been part of the cultural phenomenon that we all experienced. My sister was born in 77, and she was a big like He-Man fan, like we all were. And so so she would have seen the same thing. So well, again, Ms. Geller is doing what she's been at. She's an actress. She's given a script to read.
That's what I think too. I don't think this is representative of her. I think that she has been given a script. This is what you are to say. This is the narrative that we want to put forward about the original series to differentiate how amazing and progressive we are. Similar to what we're seeing with Star Trek, where the people that like Star Trek Discovery find something problematic in the original series, just showcase how much more progressive they are now. That's what it looks like to me.
I mean, she's never had the reputation, particularly of being a woke wankster in this town, right? Her husband's a different issue. God bless him. Her husband has been out there aggressively attacking fans, but she's never been that person. Look, she became famous through Buffy, which was a wonderful show. It's certainly one of my favorite shows, right? I know a lot of screenwriters of my generation got into the industry from watching Buffy, right? And that was a great show, empowered woman that never had to show anything off. And she also worked in an environment that was old school Hollywood Me Too crap, as we're now learning, right? And we never heard anything about it, right? So, so she's not been the spokesperson for this kind of stuff in her career.
No, her husband's like the original cuck because, let's be real, she's always been the breadwinner in that family. Yeah,
no, he's that. He is. We always, when she married him, we're like, what? Why is she with him, right? I mean, so you use like the classic example. Why is she with him, right? Because he ain't gonna leave her. He's not gonna leave her, right? He's not gonna leave her. Tim, this is the jackpot, right? So he's gonna stick around.
Yeah, indeed. So how do you think that this piece of marketing is going to work? This blame the fans for being horrible. Is this going to be the time when it works? And all the progressives are going to go and show up for He-Man?
Well, I mean, it's the whole definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome, right? And so industry is stuck in insanity. It's been stuck in insanity for 5 years. We're now stuck in the post-Trump insanity where they don't know how to let it go, right? They don't know how to let it go. And partly because they think, well, we won in November, right? And so this must be where culture is. And so they've re-upped on it, because I've said before that the industry had figured out by early 2020 that this wasn't a good marketing strategy. After the triple whammy of Terminator Dark Fate, Charlie's Angels, and Birds of Prey, none of which were particularly woke movies, but they were marketed as woke, and they got a bad fan reaction. People just didn't go based on the marketing. The industry had figured out this isn't the way to market. But then global events happened, and the industry like, well, I guess the culture really is woke. I guess it's there. And maybe we can convince these guys to finally part with their money. And I think that's a misreading of where the culture is based on the events of this previous election. But that's where the industry is right now. That's why we saw yet again this marketing issue happen with Black Widow, which I maintain is a good movie, despite that being an unpopular position in the fandom right now. It's just been marketed as woke, and now the fandom buys it. It's woke and is fighting it for that reason and championing, 80% drop. That's what happens with woke movies. It's not a woke movie, but it's been marketed as such. And so they're getting the exact result, which is, the people they're marketing to, Black Widow is going to be this, is going to shame men. Well, those people aren't going to show up. And the men aren't going to show up because they've been marketed this way. So this is going to go on. I think once another year has to go by, and people of, the economics of the industry will start returning to normal. Hopefully this year, it's already beginning the process. And then they have to, the last year, they could convince themselves all the economics, the problems were the result of global events, right? And now those global events, we're moving on, whether the politicians like it or not. Society is moving on, and so the industry is moving on, even though they don't want to admit it. And now they're going to have to. I'm thinking by next year, the realization that they came to in early 2020 will be reasserted, saying that people just don't want this crap. Maybe in order for me to keep my job, I might actually have to give them something they want.
Well, let's hope that happens. And I think that's really all there is to say about this particular story. We have another story momentarily here, but before that, I'm going to run through some of these super chats. Now, these are classic super chats that I won't be able to bring up on screen, so we're just going to have to listen to what I'm saying. The Waltman 4 said for $4.99. If what Grace Randolph talked about in her segment pertaining to He-Man is correct, Kevin could have been more diplomatic about the rumor. And I believe that what Grace Randolph said was basically she's seen the first few episodes, and according to her, He-Man lacks a strong male lead and strong male supporting character. I got the impression from her that it's all girl power all the time.
Yeah, and she tries to be balanced on this kind of stuff, right? She is at least aware of her audience, and she knows that her audience isn't that excited by that kind of thing, and so she doesn't want to lose her audience, so she tells them the truth about that. She's got a little bit of wokesterism herself, but she's aware where her viewers are, and so if she's saying that, then it is a warning cry that it is as bad or even worse than we expect, because she tries not to be she tries not to be controversial. So if she's saying that, it's probably a little bit worse than we imagine it is.
Yeah, that's a worry, isn't it? And then we have, let's see, we got that one. Etienne Falardeau says for $5 Canadian, why is media destroying all male role models? Been rewatching Farscape and Fist of the North Star, and manliness is forgotten now.
Well, I mean, I have a broader conspiracy theory, although I've discovered my theories tend to be true. I mean, it's part of a broader culture of just emasculating men by the elites in general, because that's what they've done historically. Is the elite power structures, which Hollywood is a spokes vehicle for, want men to be weak because they see them as physically threatening to their power structure. And men are the ones that they're afraid could go out there and revolt, right? Physically. That's why they're so obsessed with the events of January 6th and all that. Some guy walks into the Capitol with a flag and, he's an absolute threat, right? And so it's where we are because of an elite that's terrified of essentially being overthrown. And so the idea is if they can emasculate a generation of men, they won't be a threat. And they've succeeded to a remarkable degree. I mean, we're watching that now. Just the whole concept of the soy boy is a real phenomenon. We're watching these people that are essentially slaves to the system, that are weak, that are not masculine. I don't think they're attractive to women, despite the official narrative right now. I don't think women are actually attracted to guys like this, but the elites need weak men in order to control society, and they're at that place where they don't have any other force of control. So this is part of a narrative, and it's actually working. I mean, the next couple of generations, we don't got, we grew up with Arnold Schwarzenegger and
He-Man.
And He-Man. We grew up with powerful muscle. Even Adam was a muscular guy, just, and so even if he was seen as a soy boy, but it was his voice, and that's the voice we see of people now today, and they don't even have the body of Adam. So we're at this cultural moment here. I think everything's a pendulum. So I do think the generation after this will look at this weak, failed generation that made the world that had been getting better into a much worse place while thinking it was making it a better place. And they will revolt against it. It's just a pendulum. So I think this will backfire.
Yeah. And then one I can bring up on screen right now, Sugar Cartridge says for 50 Norwegian krona, even Grace Randolph was disgusted by Dark Fate, especially the opening scene with John Connor. She says it ruined the movie for her. You can trust her.
It does. It does. I mean, there's no reason to have killed off John Connor, and there's no reason to have done it to ruin Terminator 2, which is this incredible movie that still works, right? There's no reason to have done it. And the reason was very simple. Even though my understanding that Terminator Dark Fate is not overall preaching wokeness, the act of killing the white male hero as a kid and replacing him with a Latina is a political agenda, and that was done on purpose. There was no reason for it. All Terminator movies are about John Connor. And so that was done as part of this phenomenon. We can't have the white male who we see as a threat to our power structure.
Yeah. And then I just want to highlight that really good point here from my other Norwegian countryman, Luffy is God, who says, we could have had an extended universe. She-Ra, He-Man, and because their boss Stampede is Tex Hex's boss in Brave Star. Oh my god, these people are stupid and not visionaries. Yeah,
Correct.
indeed, that's right. If they wanted to, they could have made a He-Man, She-Ra, Brave Star shared cinematic universe. It would have been no problem at all. It's just vision, or lacking vision and lacking brand managers that stand in the way of it. But yeah, that would be like the best cinematic universe ever. And Ed Sullivan says, I'm going to save my post-heart attack Kevin Smith woke worry for Clerks 3. Number 2 was made in 2006. Enough said. Can 3 maintain the good-natured yet ribald sense of humor which is on brand for this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, time will tell. I do not know.
I mean, I just don't. But I don't know that you need good-natured humor in this. I mean, He-Man, you have to play it straight because it's ridiculous unless you play it straight.
The humor comes from characters like Orko and shit.
Yeah.
And from the stuff like I was talking about before, where like, you know, they would have the little tongue-in-cheek stuff with Adam and Tila, where obviously Adam knew who he was, but she wouldn't. Yeah. You know, it was always like kind of a little.
Yeah, but that's Lois Lane Clark Kent. That's just old archetype. Yeah.
And as far as Clerks 3, I've heard a lot about the movie. It's going to start filming here shortly. I'm looking forward to it. He tossed out the original story because Jeff Anderson wasn't interested in doing it, because the original story was just going to be kind of a retread of part 2 where Randall falls in love with somebody and gets married and all that kind of crap. Instead, after he tossed that, after he had his heart attack, he basically wrote that into the script. So Randall's character now has a heart attack, realizes he hasn't done shit with his life, and decides he's going to make a movie, and he's going to shoot it in the quick stop. So it's basically Randall making Clerks.
Okay. So it'll be self-referential. Okay.
Yeah, so it'll be kind of goes around on itself.
It'll be self-referential squared, basically.
Yeah, and I saw Jay and Silent Bob reboot, and I didn't hate it. I think it makes fun of a lot of woke shit, and Kevin even went out of his way to make fun of himself. And I mean, I've said it many times. I feel like there's 2 Kevins. There's the Kevin that he puts out there in the public, and is this jovial, bubbly, like, I love everything, Kevin Smith. And then he puts his little jabs at things in other characters. Right? Like, I've heard him say that whole thing from Clerks 2 where he's shitting on Lord of the Rings. Like, I've heard that whole thing from him personally. So, like, he does those things, and then he'll put them in certain characters and stuff. And I think there's where he really feels that way. I mean, he called Anakin Skywalker Mannequin Skywalker. Sure, he gushed about the prequels, but I'm sure, like a lot of us, he had issues. He just doesn't get to say them out in public because he don't want to piss off his friends and he wants to work. Right? Like, so, I mean, truly, is he the definition of a shill? Yes. Like, is that the truth? Honestly,
well, probably. He's just a guy trying to make it in this town.
But at the same time, do I feel like he still has good movies in him? I think so. Yeah. But then again, it's hard to say after this. I don't think this He-Man thing was a good move for him at all.
Yeah, I think it's going to set him back. I think it's going to alienate people that would have wanted to see Clerks 3 and are pissed off at him. And he's a guy who I think did this and misjudged where the wind was blowing. I just think he didn't judge it properly, just like the marketing P and everybody else. The thing is, most people in this town who have any level of attention, they're so afraid of being unpopular. They go with whatever the given moment is, and the wind is always blowing, right? And so they just don't understand that whatever the talk is in this town doesn't mean that reflects where the audience is, and the disconnect has become greater and greater, and the need to be popular and liked is so central to people in Hollywood. I had that need for the longest time, and I was like, the universe starved me by constantly putting me in situations where no matter what I did, I wouldn't be popular or liked within the system. And so I said, oh, just fuck it. I'll just be myself then. And it's very freeing. And then I could become what you're saying, the Sierra. When I could see what's really happening, and then I could see what was coming.
Yeah. And then Louise X Sparrow says, as a girl who grew up watching He-Man and finished rewatching it, or just finishing rewatching it, I totally agree that the women were genuinely strong, independent characters. Yeah, they were. And there's a reason for that I think they're very overlooking a lot, because Lou Scheimer let, his wife and his daughter work very closely on the show, in fact.
Yeah, they were. I mean, really, the filmation was. There were many people involved, but the three core people was Lou Scheimer, his wife, his daughter.
And
So
if I'm
like
not
real
mistaken,
core-
doesn't his daughter do the original voice of Tila as well? And his wife
Yes,
did,
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. That was Erika Scheimer. She was the original voice of Tila even. So yeah, it was very much a family operation, and it was a mostly female family, and it was extremely important for all of them that the series have a very pro-social, pro-quality, diverse message. I mean, it's one of the most diverse things ever put out there. I mean, that series is so progressive for its time that it's beyond belief. And if
that's Generation X. Generation X was fixing everything. We were dealing, my generation was dealing with real racism, real homophobia, real oppression of XYZ people that was real, and it was supported by the culture. So we were addressing it to the point that we actually really made a difference in the world. We made a difference in the world. They had Will and Grace could have gay characters. You could have a black president. It wasn't impossible. That wasn't done by this. It was done by our generation, right? And you could have all these things, and it became possible. And now you're left with, okay, we fixed 99% of this. So what are you going to do now? Oh, you're going to unravel all of it so you can fix it again.
Pretty much.
And I can't believe
they're not fixing anything. They're unraveling it and making it worse than ever.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. We're going to go back to 1950s. We're going back to the 1950s, and we're going to start all over again for 2 generations.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying earlier, too, is that Tila has always been a very strong character. She's never played second fiddle. She's never been played the fool outside of not knowing that Adam is He-Man. And that's the game that's being played, though.
That's all of them. That's all of them are fools about that.
Exactly. Outside of Man-at-Arms and Orko, no one else knows. Like, that's the joke. It's the Superman thing. Like, that. I don't see anything wrong with that. And in fact, she always gets the upper hand on Adam in that way. And it's not like, it's a bad thing in any way. She's never painted in a light where she's an idiot, is what I'm trying to say.
No, and she was kick-ass. She was proactive. She was the leader in so many circumstances, and she was sexy and hot and feminine at the same time.
Well, she was the leader of the guard, basically.
Yeah, she was. She was second in command only to Man-at-Arms.
And she was like a messiah figure. She was just born with this destiny she didn't know, right? She's like Moses, right? I mean, she was a very archetypal figure.
Yes, indeed. And then we have our good friend Valiant Renegade, who says, as I posited last night on Mead, which you all should go and check out on Midnight's Edge After Dark, it was a great show yesterday, I wonder how much Kevin Smith meant for He-Man to stay the course, but was overridden by Netflix. Maybe he lied, but maybe not.
I wonder if he was just brought on as a name. But anyway, go ahead, Andre.
I'm inclined to believe that the one guy at Netflix, I forget his name right now, I brought him up in the most recent editorial, he probably is going to demand some very extensive changes and stuff like that. Someone even pointed out in the comments of the recent video that this is someone that's, shall we say, very much so down with the cause and will have it infused everywhere.
Yeah, well,
so I wouldn't be surprised if
cocktail party club. It's what I tell you about. They're making stuff. They're making stuff to talk about at cocktail parties, not for the audience. And the way you can do that in that particular company is that you don't have to reveal the truth. You can hide. People publicly don't know whether your cocktail party talk is failing. So you get because again, no one is trying to make their company succeed. Everyone's trying to get their next job and keep rising up this hierarchy, right? And so they're just like, and this is a perfect placement because you can say all the woke wankery that you want at cocktail parties and impress your next employer, right? While hiding the fact that the whole thing is collapsing. No one has to find out, whereas others have to reveal the truth, of their ratings and their sales and all of that. You don't have to. So this is a perfect thing for someone climbing that ladder.
Yeah, not saying that's a good thing, but that's exactly how
that's
it is.
Reality. None of it is good. Yeah. It's just reality. Yeah.
I'm going to run through a couple of more super chats here before we get into the next story. Yeah. Stephen Otten says, Hail, Andre, Tom, Kamran, Wrenches, and chat. Hypergiver 2 said it better than I ever could. # without respect, we will reject. And Sugar Cartridge said for another 50 Norwegian krona, actually the first of the day, so tusen takk, not to sound like an a-hole, but a guy that posts selfies of himself crying on Twitter is behind the new He-Man show. Yeah, it's doomed. Hashtag cringe. Yeah, this of course would be a reference to Kevin Smith, that likes to cry a lot and likes to picture himself while doing it.
Is it irony that there's a character called Cringer in the show?
I remember Cringer.
Yeah, that's.
And what's funny is his voice.
Clarity.
He sounds nothing like he used to. Too. That's what bothers me.
Yeah,
because he's the one narrating the motherfucking trailer.
What?
You didn't realize that, Andre? Unless they because it cuts to him and it's his voice who's saying all that shit, and it's like that.
Oh
ain't
my God.
Cringer.
Okay, I had no idea. No, I
supposed to
missed
sound
that.
like this. He's the cowardly lion.
yes.
Oh my
And then
God.
when he gets Cringer, yeah, and then he's Battle Cat. You know, like no, but they got him sounding like motherfucking like he's Morgan Freeman or something. It's like, you know, he's telling the whole story of everything in that trailer. Rewatch the trailer again. It's him telling the story in the trailer. At least that's the way they make it look.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just depressing stuff.
Kevin Cringer.
Anyway, moving on, a couple of more super chats here. Mihon says for 20 Swedish krona. Greetings, Tom. Will you get deep into He-Man?
Yeah.
And Olaf van Hess says for €2. Kamran, check Doomcock's latest video on Lucasfilm.
I saw it yesterday. I saw that.
Do you have any comments on it? I guess that was.
In quick summation, his rumor that he'd heard is that both Bob Iger and Bob Chapek had always been on the fan side, and they were contractually prevented from stopping Kathleen Kennedy. I absolutely believe they were contractually prevented from stopping her, and that whether Bob Iger was always on the fan side. I think Bob Iger was always on Bob Iger's side, and he just saw this as his big crowning glory, and he was very happy with Kathleen Kennedy when she was making the money on The Force Awakens, and then he wasn't that happy when she wasn't. I don't know that he was ever on the fan side. I do believe Bob Chapek, from the beginning, was like, all right, he's a numbers guy. This is the market. We're not giving the market what it wants. Give the market what it wants. So I believe whether he's on the fan side, he's on the market side. And I think Mr. Iger was on the side of his strategy and of just remaking, classic Disney stuff, mediocrely and getting it out there. And Star Wars was that until it stopped making him money. So I don't know that he was ever on the fan side, but I'm certainly sure he wants to now present it that way to change history, because I think, it's over now and everyone knows who lost. And so he's like, well, I wasn't part of that clan. So,
yeah.
That's what I was thinking too. Fears of Mind Killer, like in Morgan Freeman's was, and then Adam swam through a tunnel ship to get to his freedom.
And with that, though, let us get through to the next story. We have more super chats.
Yeah.
That includes yours, Midnight Sun, but we'll get through all of that after the next main story.
This thing is fucking stupid.
Yeah, it is. It very well may be, but the thing is that it actually might influence our entertainment going forward.
Mm-hmm.
This is a story that's brought to us from Bounding Into Comics. It was actually posted on July 20th. That's yesterday, but our previous show was the day before that. So today is when we address it. And what they say here is that GLAAD criticizes Hollywood for zero transgender and or non-binary characters and lack of LGBTQ characters living with HIV and or disability across major studio films in 2020. Mm-hmm. And then GLAAD is calling on Hollywood to urgently prioritize active development of stories. This is then blockbuster movies featuring transgender, non-binary, and LGBTQ characters living with HIV and or disabilities, since they recently found that these particular demographics were completely absent from major studio releases in 2020. There have been positive movements along other areas, but not in those. Those are lacking, and so Hollywood is requested to do better.
Can you let me off the leash just for a minute?
Yeah,
Go
go off
for
the leash right now.
Okay, first of all, there was hardly any fucking movies in 2020. Let's remember that. Second of all, you know, I every day of my life, somebody comes up to me and goes, "Hi, I'm gay and I have HIV." People don't do that normally, and unless it's part of the story, why would they?
You know, I recently found out that a friend of mine who's gay has had HIV for years. It was
You
not brought
didn't-
up by him. Not brought up by
Exactly.
him. Someone else told me that I'd known it. I was like, doesn't change my. I'm glad he's healthy. But on the decade that I've known him, I never knew, and he never brought it up because it's very personal, right? And I found out from somebody else. It's like, I don't know if you know he's HIV. I was like, oh, okay.
Not everybody wants
up with it because it's not my business.
Not everybody wants to know who you want to fuck.
And
Some
most
things
people don't want to know your medical stuff, and most people don't want
exactly.
to reveal their private medical stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, medical history and all that shit, that's supposed to be fucking personal. And unless there's a reason why somebody should have to tell you such things, it's none of your goddamn business.
Well, unfortunately, GLAAD doesn't see it that way. Kamran, can you tell, for those that do not know, who is GLAAD and does Hollywood care?
Oh, they match a garbage bag at this point. But anyhow, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah. Well, GLAAD it portrays itself as a major spokes group for the LGBT community, you know, and they have a long history. And I think Hollywood certainly, they were very influential in the historical process that we talked about a bit earlier, that there was a pretty openly anti-gay feeling in the 80s when I grew up, especially during the AIDS era, right? And that it went from that, the 80s to 90s, where you had Will and Grace, where you had a sitcom, right? Where you had the gay character and it was all normal and fun or whatever. And, you know, and it certainly had a major impact on culture. In the early 80s, and I think Hollywood played a major role in reimagining how this community is seen by culture, at least in the West. I'm not so sure the rest of the world bought into it. But, you know, it was, you know, in the 80s, you couldn't have imagined that gay marriage would ever be a topic, much less would become legal throughout the United States. That was an incomprehensible idea when I was a kid. And yet Hollywood was a major influence in where culture went to, that became an actual reality, to the point that now conservatives embrace it. Right, you know, and they'll use it they'll use it against my religion, right? The conservatives like, well, you know, Muslims are anti-gay. I was like, last I checked, you're pretty anti-gay. You're just on board with this crap right now, right? You're just pretending to be pro-gay in order to use it as a sword against somebody else. But that's where we are now in the culture, right? And so this is a phenomenon of what we talked about, which is that a real problem that affected many generations was addressed by Generation X, my generation, to the point that we shattered the culture and rearranged it in a way that even we couldn't believe was possible when we were kids. And we did it, right? Now, look, okay, so GLAAD won. It got what it wanted. I mean, the highlight of this thing is that there are so many gay characters on television. What was the percentage in the article that they said?
Let's see here if we can find it. They did mention
there was like 26% or something like that.
22.7%.
And my understanding is that the actual gay percentage of the population is probably closer to between 5 to 7%. I could be wrong, but that's, it certainly isn't over 10%.
Actually, yeah,
it certainly is over 10%. And you know, and so that's pretty remarkable that the gay community is 2 or 3 times more represented than their actual representation in society. So that seems like a major cultural breakthrough for GLAAD. But instead of sitting back and saying, this is great, we've actually achieved beyond what we imagined was possible.
I'm sorry, I was wrong. 10%. 10%.
I'm sorry?
10%.
Okay, still 22% is not 10%, right? Okay, it's twice, right? It's quite remarkable. And you had also a change in how they're shown. If I remember correctly, gay characters throughout Hollywood history were often portrayed, you know, as bad guys, you know, or you know, it was there weren't a lot of sympathetic gay characters until maybe you had
Hollywood and Mannequin. What about Lamar in Revenge of the Nerds?
Okay, Well, so again, we're talking about 80s when we started addressing the issue, right? And so prior to that, you still had, if you go back and watch, some of the classic noir movies, characters were often implied to be gay, were villains. There was a Hitchcock movie that was like that too, with two gay men. Essentially, there's implied they're gay lovers, are the serial killers in the movie, and they're trying to outsmart the hero. So that was a large part. But certainly the 80s, that started changing, as we talked about, and the 90s suddenly you started having really, a normative gay characters. So
well,
now,
go ahead, Cameron.
No, go ahead. I interrupt you, Tom. Then I'll talk about.
No, I was just going to say it does need to be pointed out. Some people are trying to say in the chat, and it is true that 10% or close to 10% is adding all the groups together, which is what they like to do, even though some groups don't like the other.
Yeah, correct. I mean, they have internal,
they're including things like bisexual and things like that, and all these other non-binary groups and all this other stuff that aren't even.
Everyone who's not cis, which is the new phrase.
Yeah, basically anybody who's not cis. Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So now let's look at the issue that they're upset about, which is the trans issue. My understanding, and please correct me if I get the numbers wrong, my current understanding is people who are trans are about 0.2% of the population or less. Is that? I think that's right.
It's really, really small. Yes.
Yeah. However, it has become the major cultural issue of the day, right? It has become for something that's, I don't think most of us know trans, but maybe some of us know one trans person. Maybe most of us don't really know anybody, right? Personally, I think that's objectively true. And let me preface everything I'm saying. They're human beings. Human beings should be treated with respect. And that's it. I have to say that because someone's going to misinterpret what I'm saying here, saying you're anti-trans. I'm pro-human, and so I don't think, let's get past that. So let's talk about the issue now. I don't think, despite, I'm going to reveal my perception of the industry. I'm going to reveal two things based on 20 years of my perception. One is there is a very large portion of the industry that I work with that is LGBT, just doesn't talk about it very often. There's probably even more than 20%, 22%, right? Amongst the writers, certainly amongst the actors. Amongst the actors, I think there's a lot of closeted gay people to this day, right? Some very famous movie stars that I know are gay, the audience doesn't to this day know they are, right? So the gay community is an important part of Hollywood and has been really since the beginning, right? Internally, at least. Now, there is an issue that I'm just giving my perception on because I witnessed this on a show I worked on, is that on one level, the woke crowd, I worked on a show with a woke showrunner who was always talking about all of this stuff, right? And it was, about we have to save the world and the world is evil and the evil white man and all that stuff, right? And then this person made a big deal about how, some of the characters in the show were gay. This was important to this particular showrunner. That's fine. Characters were good characters. And then this person made a big deal about we're going to introduce a trans character onto the show. Okay, no problem. And then there was a particular trans actress that they wanted to hire. I was working as essentially, on the show, I was the liaison with casting. So I immediately started reaching out to that trans actors or actresses representatives, and they got very excited because she doesn't get a lot of work, right? She doesn't get a lot of work, right? And so suddenly like, oh, wow, wait, the showrunner is really interested in creating a role just for her. They were so excited. And then suddenly, without explanation, the whole character got pulled. We'll do it next season. And it never happened, right? Because I don't know whether that came from the network itself. I think it's partly the network wasn't maybe that excited about that character because they're like, I don't think anybody really cares about this character for all the talk that the industry is saying about it. They're like, well, I don't think the audience really identifies or cares with this character. That might have been what they were saying. And also, I got the impression that this woke boss of mine didn't care as much as they pretended to. They just needed to say it in the room, the cocktail party. They needed to say in the room, we're going to do this. But when the moment came where they could pull the trigger, and I'm like, hey, sure. Here, conservative Muslim guy, no problem. Bring in the trans character. I'm ready to write it, right? I'm ready to write authentically. I'm talking to the trans actresses, representatives. Everyone's getting excited with blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh, we're actually not going to pull the trigger on this. So it turns out that the industry is not as woke as it likes to be. It likes to say these things. But I actually personally think that a great many people who are saying these things are uncomfortable with trans people because they had the chance to pull the trigger and they didn't.
Well, we almost can guarantee it. Yeah, because we've heard the similar stories from all over the place, and we've been saying this for a while. It's not true. It's virtue signaling in the truest sense of the term. In a sense, like we've said it before, it's nothing. None of this is going to change until people actually stand up and go, "Wait a minute! I'm sick of being your circus freak. I'm sick of you touting me out here. Like, look at our gay character, look at our trans character, look at our black character, look at our Asian character, look at our disabled character." And that's why we always make fun of the guy in the wheelchair or not make fun of the guy in the wheelchair on Star Trek, but the idea that they put a guy in a wheelchair on Star Trek on a starship, because it's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, so they can't solve. Yeah. I mean, there's major developments in 2021 with regard to mobility, and so they can't, in 400 years from now, they haven't figured this out.
Well, first of all, it makes no sense, because if we've ever seen that kind of shit, they get jostled around. That guy's going flying. Right.
Yeah.
And not only that, we're
like that, shaky camera time. Yeah,
exactly. And not only that, like your point you just said, we've got situations where in the future you can have them. There's tons of options that they wouldn't have them in just a regular wheelchair. You're on a sci-fi show. You could do all kinds of neat stuff. We're not saying don't have a disabled character. What we're saying is make it make sense. Don't have him rolling around in the fucking ship.
I choose not to get the bionic legs that are that I could have in 400 years. I choose not to have them. Let's explore why. Okay.
Or I always bring exactly. Let's just say why the wheelchair is more empowering than bionic legs, as you say. Yeah.
Well, like I always bring up how like Kirk couldn't get Ret 9, 6 or 9 or whatever. The deal is, so he could see, he has to get glasses or whatever. They bring that up in part 4. You just have something like that. He's allergic to something in the whatever, so they can't do that, and he's in a wheelchair. But have it be. And
do we remember? Yeah. Do we remember Geordie LaForge, a blind character, and they deeply explored how his visor, and there was that great moment where they could actually see through the visor, and Picard's like, "Oh, I finally understand him. I finally understand it."
Because not just that, he's given how many opportunities to where he could have had his eyes fixed, and he chose not to.
Q actually gave it to him once. There was that episode where Q gave him his eyes back, and he saw Tasha Yar, and he said, "You're beautiful." He says, "Let me go back to being blind." He just saw one thing. He saw Tasha Yar, "You're beautiful. I want to be blind again." He takes it back. He doesn't want it. I mean, so again, this was all solved by Generation X. That's a Generation X show.
We've touched on all this shit before. It's really ridiculous.
Yeah, we did all this stuff because we cared about this stuff. We're the bitter, burned out generation, and we cared about this stuff.
Now, again, did we get everything right? No. Clearly, there was some stuff that we didn't get right. But I argued time and time again, we've been past all this shit. We went through the PC 90s. We are not these racist, homophobic, whatever phobe you want to put there that they're trying to paint everybody as. It's just getting ridiculous. We just want entertainment. Sure, if I want to go see a movie about an LGBTQ character who's dying of HIV, I'll go watch Philadelphia.
Well, look, I want to go back for a second to the
if I want to watch fucking Star Wars, I'll watch fucking Star Wars, right?
But I want to go back for a second to this trans conversation. I want to call out again the hypocrisy of the industry, because if you recall, I think it was Scarlett Johansson a couple of years ago was going to play a trans character. It was a historical person, right? And then there was this huge explosion of the woke crowd. Yeah, it was maybe 18 months ago. Huge explosion of the woke crowd that said, she's not trans. You have to hire a trans actor for this. Now, people try to rationally say, look, this is allegedly an issue you all care about, right? The culture needs to hear about it. Okay, then who's the best person to get people, average Joe Blow wants to see Scarlett Johansson? Even in Black Widow, some of us wanted to see her. And, so they will go see this movie. Maybe they'll learn something in the same way Tom Hanks is a beloved actor. So if you're going to tell a gay story, Hanks is the guy you do it through in order to get the average American to get interested, right? And then, but the pressure rose, she backed out, and like, we're going to hire a trans actor. Anybody heard more about that project? No, it's done. The project is dead, right? Because they're never going to make that thing without a major star. And, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, there'll be people, I don't know everything, but to my knowledge, no major star has come out and said they are actually trans, aside from like, I'm gender fluid, which is the new story every young kid is saying today, right?
Well, but they're all saying they're bi or whatever, just to keep.
Yeah, but actually saying I'm a trans person. I've had a surgery. I mean, I think that there's one Elliot Page, right? But I don't know that Page has the draw that brings people in to see this particular actor, right?
Honestly, I don't know.
But it's not. But again, they're also of a certain generation where this is now the thing, right? So I just don't know. So this is the hypocrisy of Hollywood. Hollywood loves this thing in particular and doesn't like it. Privately, they all don't really like trans people, and publicly, they all embrace them and lecture them. So, and it's interesting for me as as a Muslim who's a conservative religious guy who's has traditional values and whatever. My philosophy is very simple. I'm going to treat you as a human being. You're trans. I'm going to treat you want that pronoun. I'm going to give it to you, even though I've been very publicly against people shouting their pronouns. You want me to call you this? I'm going to go with it because I'm pro-human and I will respect you as an individual. Whereas these people are talking about theoretical ideas and disrespect actual individuals when presented with them.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. And like I've said it before too. It's like if somebody comes to me and they say, I identify as a she, and I'd rather you call me a she. That's fine. But in most cases, I'm going to call somebody their name to their face. Like, you're never going to refer to somebody as a he or a she unless they're not even really in the room or you're talking in generals. And in which case, I am not above, or I have no problems with, respecting anybody's wishes on that part. That's not what this is about. It's exactly what the last thing you were saying about is, Cameron, is where people are forcing people into doing it, forcing people to put it out there. As we've said before, these are things that were supposed to be kept to yourself if you wanted to, or if you wanted to be open, that's fine. All this movement was originally about, which is what we pushed for and we got so far with in the 90s and the early aughts, was that people that were, not straight, as you put up before, basically wanted to live in public and not be persecuted. And not only that, in certain areas, it was still technically illegal. Sure. And not only that, they just wanted to be able to have their partners to get the same benefits and rights.
They want to be treated as human beings, like other
exactly. Any other couple would be treated that had nothing to do with their sex or gender or anything to do with that, and that's completely fair. Nobody has any issues with that, And everybody said yes, gay people should be allowed to get married. They need to be able to suffer just like the rest of us. So, that's the
and I'm saying, I know a lot of gay people who are divorced now and gone through bitter divorces. I'm like, all right, well, marriage kind of sucks for everybody, but I'm glad you have
being facetious, but no, it's true. I don't see where if somebody loves somebody, as long as they're of legal age of consent and everybody's on board, I don't see a problem with that. That's not what this is about. What this is about is projecting it into every last goddamn thing. And the title itself says exactly what I was saying in the first part. You don't have a character come on and say, "Hi, my name is Charlie. I'm gay and I have AIDS." You don't.
And I'm in a wheelchair. Let's not forget about the
wheelchair. And I'm in a wheelchair.
Yeah. Because to me, this is the funny thing. This is something that almost lends itself to parody, because here is this is GLAAD telling Hollywood, in your next big budget feature, you need to give a speaking role to a transgender black who has HIV and is in a wheelchair. Go and make it serious and try not to make it a parody.
Described Oscar bait. Just make that movie. Fuck keeping it out of the fucking superheroes and make that movie. I mean, like, what the fuck?
Yeah, but that you're not going to, because it's a business, right? And they know that the audience, isn't excited by that character.
I don't know. That's why they're making these choices.
That's why they're making these choices. And people that are
Tom Hanks in it, I'm sold.
The character.
Just make a movie about that character. It doesn't have to be.
And then you'll find out. Make a movie about that character, and then you'll find out the audience. You'll find. Scarlett Johansson tried. She might have actually had a cultural shift about this issue, right? Because most of us don't know trans live stories. We don't know their stories. We don't know their history. We don't know anything beyond the blah blah of people like GLAAD talking. We don't know their personal journey. So that movie might have opened up people and said, "Hey, okay, maybe I should have thought about these people a little differently." They're never gonna see that movie because they decided can't have a movie star for it. And so now, how are you going to get the audience? And say Hollywood's like, well, there's no audience without this, and it is.
But getting back to the main topic here,
we're going to get back to
we went into a long tangent here. But to get back to the main topic, do you think that because GLAAD is just an interest organization, on paper they have no actual authority over the industry, but the industry can choose to listen? Will they choose to listen? Will the producers and money men take this seriously and decide, whoa, we really need to do better here? Or are they going to say, yeah, I don't think so? What do you think is going to happen?
The answer is very simple. The only ones that are going to listen to GLAAD on this are people that are doing stunt casting, that are trying to do or they're basically doing a PR move, right? It's just a stunt, and you'll know that because here's time for me to put on my seer cap, right? In response to this, sometime within the next few months, I'd say within 6 months, you will see in Deadline or one of the trades, you will see some producer going out there about how they are putting out this trans character, or even more specifically, the HIV character or trans, or LGBT in a wheelchair, whatever, and they're going to make a big deal about that and that will be done purely to virtue signal the cocktail party crowd that I want to get in. It will likely be sort of a mid-level producer that's trying to get into the cocktail party higher level crowd, right? And so I want to be in, and they will talk about that. They might even do it. They might even cast that character, and it will likely be a character they're going to put zero effort into actually making a good character, and will say a couple of lines, and then that will have fulfilled the check mark for the cocktail party, right? So that's coming. Will there be a cultural shift from this? No, I don't believe there will be. I believe in particular with the trans issue, because the certain trans activist has said that only a trans actor can play trans characters, right? By placing that restriction on, I don't think it can ever become mainstream, simply because I just don't think there are any major actors, aside from Elliot Page, that are openly trans or having surgery and stuff like that, not just identifying as something, right? They're actually changing themselves to reflect who they feel they are. I just don't think those people are out there. Most actors aren't that. And the funny joke of all of this is that the joke of all of this now, because part of this, going back to this article, is that, that if the activists in this area want to limit who is represented, right, that only a trans actor can play a trans character, right? They've already now closed the door to the vast majority of actors, right? The irony of it is that you have, what can you do about straight actors playing gay, which has happened like Hanks and others, like Sean Penn played Harvey Milk, right? To a very critically acclaimed appearance. He can't do that anymore under the current narrative, right? The irony of that is that there are so many actors who are gay, who have in the closet today in 2021, major movie stars. And everyone knows, aside from the audience, their orientation. We all know it in the industry, right? And we are casting them to play straight. Right. And, and they want that. The reason they're not out is they want those roles. Right. And they know, they thought the audience won't react to I'm a leading man and a lover, and they find out that I like dudes. They're not going to like that. That's the first fear they have. The second fear now is this added level of the GLAAD, activism, which is, oh, well, can I play an orientation that I'm not? I don't even want to go near that.
I don't know what you're talking about. Like you're totally making stuff up. That's not true at all. Don't listen to this Kamran Pasha guy. He's making it up.
Who's that voice supposed to be? Or maybe you can't say.
No idea. No idea.
Okay.
I think most people recognize the John Travolta.
No comment. No comment. I just heard recently, just this week, I found out that a major actor was dating a lovely girl that I kind of liked myself. And then I grumbled about it to my manager. I was like, oh, whatever. This dude stole this chick. I kind of liked her. And he just emailed me back, XYZ is gay. Don't worry about it. I was like, okay, I didn't even know that. But I'm like, all right, no problem.
It's just just for the cameras.
Yeah. That was 2 days ago. I was like, all right.
Keeping up appearances.
Yeah.
But
I always gotta mess with my head.
We have a couple of super chats to go through here. I think we covered this story quite well as it is, and we even got the prediction from Kamran the Seer, which is all good and well. So let's get into the super chats. First, we'll do the ones that are visible on screen. Then we'll do the ones behind here for Kamran in case you have to go out here soon.
Wind down, a little bit.
Yeah. Sean Carter says, Hollywood used to be fun because it reflected culture via entertainment. Now it's trying to change our culture via propaganda. Hail Kamran. And then I'm just going to go through here behind the scenes and pick out the ones that are specifically for you, Kamran, because I know we only have you for a limited amount of time here. So just give me 1 second to refresh, make sure I catch them all. And Tom, if you can pay attention to if there are any more questions for Kamran coming in while I do that, because I can't look at 2 places at once.
I will try.
Yeah. Let's see. Daryl the Derelict says, "Hail Andre, Tom, and Kamran. With all the crap going on with Hollywood, I'm glad I have an extensive DVD collection." Yeah, do take care of
Same here. I keep it. I have, I'm not, first of all, I don't like streaming anyway, because my streaming, I hate when it gets interrupted because the server is weird or whatever. And I keep physical DVDs and Blu-rays because things get canceled. Like thankfully, I have the original Dukes of Hazzard, which was pulled for a while because, Confederate flag on the General Lee or whatever. So,
yeah. And then the last millennial says, Kamran Pasha, my guy, how you been? Question for you all. Who's the better filmmaker? Patty Jenkins of Garbage Wonder Woman 84 fame or Kevin Smith of this garbage fame?
Kevin Smith's made more movies.
Yeah, I think it's a hard question because I love the original Wonder Woman and I despise the sequel. I despised it. And I was offended by it on many levels. And so I guess I got to go with Kevin Smith because he's made movies that have entertained me pretty consistently, right? And whereas, Ms. Jenkins made one incredible movie that seems to have been based on the screenplay, a very good screenplay. And, she does have visual talent. Just keep her away from a story.
Yeah, I think between Clerks and Dogma alone, Kevin's got the edge there because Patty hasn't made much. Yeah, she's got more acclaim because of the 2 movies that she has done that were good. But yeah, Wonder Woman 84 is.
Well, I mean, we look at the thing. She made Monster, which is a critically acclaimed movie, and it's a good movie, and Charlize Theron got an Oscar for it. And then she disappeared for 20 years. So I'm thinking in those 20 years, she was writing scripts and trying to put her stamp on projects, and that's why
she worked a lot on TV as well. She did it's not like she did nothing. She worked on TV and did exceedingly well for herself there.
But TV is a writer's medium. The director is given, here's a script, you film that.
Yeah. And Kevin does the same stuff, don't get me wrong. I mean, he's worked in a lot in the CW verse and a few other places. I mean, overall, though, if I had to choose somebody to make like a movie like a superhero movie, I'd probably give Kevin the edge on that one. I mean, he does know more clearly about superheroes than she does. You just got to get him around the right people. I think this whole Netflix thing, and I'm not making excuses for Kevin. I think it was kind of prepackaged for him when he walked in.
I told this is the shtick, and you're going to go out with a shtick, and he went out with a shtick.
Yeah, and they just slapped his name on it because they knew it would get fanboys' attention. I really do. I mean, I'm sure he had some input, and he clearly has some input over the casting, and that's what he did. He did a director's kind of job in that sense,
And he unfortunately took the shtick a little too far. Like he made it out to be that I hated his original He-Man. Like, you don't have to take it that far, man. Just go with the work. You have to take it out that way.
I think that part, Cameron, I don't know, is basically like when he got the job, when he got the gig, he played it up that he was a He-Man fan. But in his history, it's clear that he was never a He-Man fan. And I've said that from the start before I even started digging. I'm like, he would have been too old for He-Man. Like his age group. I mean, he was the Star Wars kids. Like he was at that prime age with Star Wars. So like by the time He-Man came around, he was too old already. And he has said that in the past, but when he got announced for the show, it was like, I used to come home every day and watch He-Man every day after school and blah, blah, blah. He's like, you lying motherfucker. You did not. Because we have more than enough proof where you say, I'm not a He-Man fan, which is not the problem. The problem is the lying. As Andre points out in his editorial, you cannot be a fan of something and still bring something to the table. And Kevin is a great writer, especially when it comes to dialogue. So, I mean, it's not like he can't do certain things, and it's not like he doesn't have a very, vast knowledge of comic book history and these kind of characters. And that's all he had to do is come out and say, like Andre and I've said, he just had to come out and say, look, I may not be a He-Man fan, but I am a fan of superheroes, and I do know Conan, and I know all this kind of stuff. I think I can bring something to the table here. Well, but I think it was all prepackaged for him. Yeah, go ahead.
It's like this. Rian Johnson is a brilliant visual director. he isn't a fan of Star Wars. He's very clear to me. Had he just been given a good script, I think he would have made a stunningly beautiful movie that would have been very entertaining. But he was given the script and he wasn't a fan of it, and that was the disaster. Same thing with Patty Jenkins, right? She didn't understand Wonder Woman, and when given the script, she ruined it. And so had she just been given, I actually know a little bit about the background of what happened on Wonder Woman 84. I will say this because I've gotten this directly from people who know the people involved, that the original screenwriters who were brilliant on that first movie, I thought made a very good screenplay. They basically, Ms. Jenkins had wanted credit on the first screen. I want to be a co-writer on this. And they said, no, you didn't do enough work on this. We did all the writing. You did the directing. We're not going to give it to you. And it was, they brought it, she fought it all the way to the Writers Guild to try to get credit on the movie. And she didn't get it. The Writers Guild's like, no, the script is really theirs. You weren't involved in writing.
The first Wonder Woman?
The first Wonder Woman. And so, and then she was like, well, okay, well, then she got her second movie. The movie's a huge success. And she's like, I don't want these guys. And they were out. Because,
well, didn't Jeff Johns have to rewrite the ending anyway?
Of the first movie?
I think so. I thought that's what I had heard.
Well, I mean, as you know, the third people complain about the third act feels like it's another movie, right?
Yeah.
I very much enjoyed the movie. I was like, "What's happening here? Was it God?"
Well, I could have fixed the third act real easy. It's real simple. But how would you do it? All you do is you make her dad be Ares, so that. So
there's an actual connection. It's not a wrong.
Yeah, so that's why her mom lied to her all this time, and that's why war still continues after she kills her father, because she's still alive. So that's her burden now that she carries that with her for the rest of her life, and that's why she gets involved whenever there's a war, because she feels guilty. That's an easy thing to hang on that character, and it could have made her infinitely more interesting. And it was just stupid. They just turned it into
that would have been a good angle on it.
CGI fest or whatever.
So let's get back to this, Andrew. But that's my view on
absolutely.
There's a lot of this internal politics that are making what we're making right now. So
yes, absolutely. And then Joshua Moolman says, for 70 South African rands. And I hope you take care of yourself there in South Africa these days.
Yeah.
Kamran, with YouTube gaining more eyeballs than ever, we are seeing more and more Hollywood celebrities try and break into the market. Will they successfully take it over and make it part of the machine?
I personally think YouTube is never going to be Hollywood. I think they tried with YouTube Red, and they actually made Cobra Kai, which was under YouTube, and it was a great show before it got to Netflix, right? So I just don't get the vibe that there's a Hollywood hierarchy, and YouTube is seen as what we're doing right now is seen as the common masses, the talentless, unwashed masses. So if someone is doing YouTube, like Megyn Kelly has a YouTube news show, and now she's being mocked, right? That she went from being Fox and all these major news networks to doing a YouTube show, right? So, and there really is that stigma in the industry that I don't see going away anywhere, just because it is a mass access platform. It is seen as being with the unwashed masses and losing the glamour and the prestige of the industry, which exists because of a barrier between the people on Olympus and the people on Earth. So I don't think YouTube is ever going to be that. It's just not. It's a mass audience thing, and that's not what the industry wants, to create prestige.
All right.
Exactly.
And then we have EVA Unit 4A, who says for $5, if the cocktails don't know woke doesn't work, why do they still... No, one more time. If the cocktails know woke doesn't work, why do they still insist on using it? Also, when will we see Hollywood finally turn away from the woke?
Well, the cocktails insist on using it because of an elitist belief that the average person is an idiot and needs to be taught, things. And the cocktail people like to see themselves as idealistic people. They don't want to see themselves as just money-grubbing jerks, which is what a lot of them are, right? And so they want to see themselves as these noble people, right? And so they spout all of this stuff, from the safety of their gated communities and their private security and all of these things, right? And their disconnect from reality. So it's just a means of feeling superior to people. They know objectively it doesn't work, but it's the their belief that they're like the gods of Olympus who are guiding. I'm using Olympus a lot, I guess, because of Wonder Woman, right? But the gods of Olympus, who are guiding the unwashed masses. And as long as they're up there on Olympus, untouchable, they can, like the gods of Olympus were arbitrary, crazy people, right? And so they didn't care ultimately if they helped humanity, and they did a lot of crazy things. That's kind of the analogy here. So the only issue becomes when Olympus starts falling, right? Which is where the economics are pushing it towards. So.
And I have a different, not different, but kind of a similar reason where I think this came from is like, look, we were bringing it up earlier. Hollywood's always kind of been on the front end of things. Like they did movies like Milk, and they did movies like Philadelphia and all this kind of stuff before. So they feel like they have like this thing, and that's why when they get up there on the Oscars, they try to do this big like smug speech like they know better. And like Cameron said, part of it's they like to think they're above everybody. Plus they like to think, oh, it's my duty since I have this platform to fight for the little people, and that makes me better. And that's why, I can sleep at night and still have a fucking jet and 12 maids and all this other shit. It's this guilt factor is what it is. And I think they saw this movement coming. And they forgot, and they felt like, oh, well, we were always ahead of this shit. Now the skeletons are gonna come out the closet. They knew things like, like Weinstein and all these other things were on the horizon. They knew it was gonna happen. Yeah. And so they knew sooner or later that the light was going to be shined on them. So what did they do? The same thing that Washington and everybody else did. They tried to shine the light elsewhere. And that's what I said.
That's exactly right.
Throughout all this time, it's always been, the little people versus the man, right? Well, instead they took the man and they put white in front of it so they could distract from them. So instead of you going after them, they are going after us. So we're the problem now, not them. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to project everything onto everybody else so that you don't pay attention that they are some of the most vile creatures you've ever seen on Earth.
Divide and conquer is what it's called. And then I know Kamran has to go, so one final one. Willie Woodward says for $4.99, I got to go to work. Much love to the panel and the chat. Kamran, always a pleasure to see you on the show. Always insightful. Kamran, I'll be in touch. Perfect. And with that, we have more super chats to go through. We got one.
We got one right now for Cameron. Yep.
Okay. So, old redneck nerd says, Kamran, how do we live in a world where Luke Skywalker breaks the internet, and over a year later we have no Rogue One with the pre-return of the Jedi Luke?
My answer is be patient, because I remain stubbornly of the belief that the one thing that's going to guide us all out of this madness is going to be Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, and the future of Lucasfilm. So I ask you to be patient. I cannot reveal them, but I'm hearing certain incredible rumors that I don't want to reveal unless I verified them about where Star Wars is going. But if they are true, then we've already had major successes we don't even know about yet. And so let me try to verify them and find out if they're true. So, but even if they're not, just be patient. Star Wars is going to lead us out of this. I believe that.
We got at least one more for you, because Midnight Sun, I think we promised him.
Midnight Sun has been patient, and he asked for $6 Canadian dollars 99. Hello, everyone. I was wondering if you're fans of the original Old Boy and how it compares to the remake, especially the endings. Cheers.
I didn't see the original Old Boy, so I'm sorry. You paid a lot of money to get that kind of answer. So,
I have not seen either the original or the remake.
I do know that there's various differences. I've only seen bits and pieces of the original, and I apologize for that as well. I avoided the remake because I've heard such bad shit about it. So unfortunately, I can't give you a better answer than that. I wanted Robert Meyer.
I regret we couldn't be of any more assistance. But Kamran, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on today, as every other day that you are on the air. The chat says that the original Old Boy is much better. That I have consistently heard. But Kamran, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Valiant Renegade also says here towards the end, agreed, Kamran, we need to be patient with Lucasfilm right now. The wheels are turning because money talks. Favreau makes them loads of it.
He's correct. And so on that note, I'll head on out, but that's for all of our grumbling about the industry and it's being trapped in its woke wankery and PR and stuff it doesn't believe and all these things. money does talk. And just understand that the last several years have been a strange moment in history. They've been a strange moment in Hollywood. They've been a strange moment in Washington, D.C. And the last 18 months have added to the bizarreness. We've endured something in the last several years that none of us have endured in our lifetime. In some ways, it's like, it's analogous to living in the 1930s and 40s going, the world is turning upside down and I don't know where it's going to go, right? But it will go forward. And at the end of the day, the one law of the universe is money talks, right? And money isn't going away anywhere. There will always be, money is just a reflection of resources. And so it's all, and ultimately resources guide the direction of the world for better and for worse. So the resources are not, you've all done your jobs. You've denied them the resources they wanted for things that you did that were poorly done. And now they're hungry for those resources. And because they've seen that those resources do exist and people like Jon Favreau know how to access those resources, eventually greed wins out over everything else. And that's its saving grace of Hollywood.
Those are some excellent parting words here. And you're also getting a lot of love in the chat here.
And don't worry, guys, we'll have
Martin,
Cameron back more, of course. Yes.
Yeah, of course. DV Martin points out that if you're old, then I'm ancient.
So, well, DB Martin's also reading my novel, so thank you. I always love when people, reading my books and enjoying them. So that's one way you guys can support me. I think on the chat, people have seen my website name, CamranPasha.com.
And also, if you just check in the description, because we always put in the description of every single video, we put where you can find our guests. So the link to Kamran Pasha's webpage is in the description of this video. So yeah, go and check that out. And also, smash that like button. Get us to 1,000 likes. We're almost there. Almost there. If you almost Kamran Pasha coming on the show, then smash that
very close. 6 more to go and do it. All right. So everyone, thank you very much. I actually have work to do. Andre, Tom, thank you for your time. I hope we can do another one of these before the month ends, because I love interacting with your audience, and I always feel like something new comes out of every conversation we have, and it's meaningful to me. So thank you.
We always love having you. So
yes, indeed.
Next time. Some hot chicks, please. Whatever.
Yeah, and also regrets, but she was out driving, so she couldn't come on today.
I would like to be on with her because I like lovely ladies more than I like dudes. So please.
Well, we're glad to hear it, and I'm in the same boat as you. So
yeah.
All right, guys.
God bless what I said about He-Man earlier. So.
It's all good. And I love Tila and I love Shira and all that. So God bless to the chat. I will talk to you all later. Take care.
Yes, take care, everyone. And we have a couple of more super chats to go through, because there we went through the ones that were specifically for Kamran. So now we're back to classic super chats. Fear Sundown says for $2, their goal is to recondition the consumer. And Lio Convoy's review said for $19.99. Thank you so much. Just going to be direct here. I generally appreciate you guys, but the last video on this topic promoted Scott of Spectre Creatives. That man is a man that lies, has no principles, and has actively damaged Motu. Be careful. I don't know too much about that, but what I do know is that he is also very, very insightful when it comes to the history of the Masters of the Universe. To that end, I feel that he has good videos. Beyond that, I am not sufficiently informed on the matter to be able to make any commentary on that one way or the other. And then Ali says, hail everyone, and hi Kamran, who just left, but he did see your comment before he left here. The Jack of all casuals says, morning Andre, Tom, Kamran, Wrenches, and chat. So yeah, that's how all these chats are. And the Waltman 4 said, have to agree with an earlier comment. Kevin probably should have kept quiet about the rumor, or at least been diplomatic about it. Yes, indeed. Responding to that tweet was the biggest mistake you ever did. Yeah. Like, everyone take heed. You don't have to respond. Just
it's like Mangold.
You don't have to respond.
Don't. You're only going to make it worse, because now all Kevin's done is, it's the same thing with Mangold. And only really
one tweet, he ruined the whole thing.
Yeah.
It would have been ruined right now when it comes out, it would have been ruined anyway. But in that one tweet, he ruined the hype going into it. And there was no coming back from it. Same thing with Mangle's tweet, as you pointed out, Tom. And then, let's see. Darius Minchausen sent us a popcorn super sticker, so thank you so much for that. And then, let's see. And we got that one. Daniel says, or like the attempt to fix Ghostbusters. I think we got that one earlier. Yeah, we did get that one. And then we got Michael Miller's. And Matt Moylan says, for 10 Canadian dollars, big Masters of the Universe collector and Kevin Smith supporter. But Kevin's behavior has lost me as a fan. Will avoid his future projects.
I'm kind of in the same boat, but not exactly. Like I swear there's got to be two Kevins. I do, and I'm not trying to stick up for the guy. I have no reason or rhyme to. He's done this to himself. You know, this is you feel like it's a friend where you've just watched them go down this road, and you keep warning them and warning them and warning them, and they should know better. But you just keep watching it happen, and there's nothing you can do but just cry at the result, I guess. I don't know what else to do. You can't stop them from making the mistake. It's already done. It's over with. The milk's been spilt. As far as you not going to see any of his other films or anything else he's a part of, that's obviously a choice that some people have to make going forward. I've had to make the same kind of choice with certain other franchises. I will go see Clerks 3, but then again, if I watch the trailer and it looks like it's nothing but woke garbage, then I'll be just like, you know what? We lost Kevin too, I guess. I mean, here's the thing. Kevin has been married to a pro-feminist for the last 20 some years or whatever, 20 years, and he's a father to a daughter now. So of course, a lot of this stuff is, meaningful to him as far as that part of things goes. But yeah, he's either, I see this is the thing with Kevin is I got to believe he's too smart for some of this shit. And that's why I know the shill factor out of him. I don't really pick on him as much as some people because I know what he's doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. You recognize that he doesn't really mean this stuff.
Exactly. Yes. And
it's
so
a
I
role.
don't take it
That's
as genuine.
Same thing we said in an earlier video. It's a role. He wants to come across this way, but it's not genuine. And more people recognize that it's not genuine.
And right, like he is surrounded by Me Too is exactly what I'm kind of trying to say. Now, does that mean that he's redeemable in any way? I don't know. If Clerks 3 comes out and it's really fucking good and it feels like classic Kevin, will I forgive him for something he does to He-Man? I don't know, because I don't know if he's all to blame for this. And that's what I was saying before. I feel like he was just brought on to something that was already kind of prepackaged, and he should have just stayed out of it. He should have just been happy to have the job, moved on. Should have never went after anybody. That's another problem with Kevin is he has this. He's always been on social media, so for him this is just another Tuesday. But I don't think he sees the repercussions for this. Does that make sense too? I guess.
I think he will once.
He will, and he is now.
Once the blowback is coming. Yeah. We have a few more here. Sugar Cartridge says for another 50 Norwegian krona, tusen takk. Future creators, read the fine print and always keep the rights and creative input to your work. Oh, and quit before you turn into an SJW villain. Magician Sapphire says for $10. Kevin Smith is a clown. He owes Clownfish TV a huge apology for lying and BS he put them through. Shame on him. He should never have responded. Simple as that. That was the biggest mistake he ever did. Or maybe not the biggest ever, but it's right up there. That's for sure.
This is what Stan Lee is saying here is really what hurts for me because like Kevin's one of the reasons I'm doing this. Like he was one of the reasons I got into this stuff. I mean, he got me interested in the idea that you can make movies that weren't just these, untangible things for billions of dollars. And then when it came to podcasting, he was one of the first pioneers. So yeah, it really hurts when he's come to this point. So if anything, that's where I'm coming from on this. And yeah, this is exactly what I'm alluding to. White Knight is he was part of the marketing package. Exactly that. Yes.
Yeah. Indeed. And then we have your Muslim uncle says she says she's just a friend. Quote from Bismarcky.
You got what I need.
That's what I thought. I thought it was that song. You know where I know that one from?
Friend? How?
I know that song from one place only. Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, well, he just passed away last week.
Oh, okay.
He was only 57, I think it was.
Oh, well, that's a shame. Oh,
Yep, but yeah, honestly, yeah, if it wasn't for Beavis and Butthead, that song probably would have been forgotten because it was a one-hit wonder anyway. But yeah.
And then Super Cartridge says for yet another 50 Norwegian krona, 1000 takk igjen. I watched all the boys' shows because I was a boy, but I also watched the girls' shows, She-Ra and Gem and the Holograms. The 80s being toxic is a lie. Well, hell yes, absolutely. I remember that. Every single time there was like a battle of sexes episode, the girls always won. You could like count on it. It wasn't even a question. And Daniel says for $5, the woke crowd loves to say it's just a cartoon to sell toys, to lessen the original shows, as if Netflix profit is noble, but Mattel's profit isn't. Yes, well, that's a very good point.
And there's another thing that really bothers me about this is, and I keep bringing this up to Andre, and it'll come up in our video when we get into the rights issue, is just the way that they're doing, just like how even worse than Star Trek in some ways, of trying to hide the fact that this is under some different thing. And then Kevin's had to come out and defend that recently about how, I never said it was a sequel. It's like, no, actually, there's a lot of proof out there that a lot of people have said this is a direct sequel to the, but there's a little game.
To be fair though, the people that said it's a direct sequel, they're not people directly involved with the production. They are just relaying what they thought they heard from the actual production. They have always worded themselves in a way where they can say, aha, we never said
and and I think this will be a big part of that video, or at least a portion of it, to where we point out the wordplay, and it kind of goes along with the wordplay.
It has been wordplay, and the only one that hasn't done it are those that hasn't been like in on it, like people in the media stuff that has like they have made the comment, but they did it on their own accord, so the studio can hide behind that.
Yeah.
And
I mean, here's the other thing too, is like they brought up Seth Rogen. Now they got Seth Rogen coming in to ruin TMNT for me. It's like, what the fuck? So they get Kevin Smith, and then
I'll never forgive him for what he did to Preacher.
And then his copycat fucking coming in and doing TMNT on me. What the fuck, dude? Like my two major fucking franchises. Thanks.
Ruining everything. But yeah, and then Mark Whitner says for $5, Dark Fate was all about pushing the strong men aside for strong women. Arnold was a glorified rape salesman. Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. And Sugar Cartridge points out, we got this one already, that even Grace Randolph was disgusted by Dark Fate. And let's see.
While you're doing that, like, love this Bertrand Gert Russell. Kevin, you're what the French call les incompetents. For those who have seen Home Alone, that works very well in this instance.
Yeah. And Rambam 3000 says for £5 Smith didn't have to be a fan, only be honest and do his research. Then he could have been Motu's Nicholas Meyer. But no, we got this fiasco. Indeed. And OC Steve says for $5, just tired of the sequels injecting socio-political ideology. Can we just have something entertaining and escapism? Kevin Schill is a He-Man poser. Hyperdiver 2 says the most positively progressive and influential shows ever made, in his opinion, were Motu, G.I. Joe, and Power Rangers. Everyone was equal and well represented.
Good points. Very good points.
Really good points, yeah. Goes back to what Kamran was saying. Generation X sorted everything out, and currently it's all being undone and made worse than it was.
Right.
Tanner Redland says, what are your opinion on the live-action version of the Masters of the Universe from 1987? What's your opinion on that?
Oh, boy. Well, I know yours is going to be the fun one. I didn't hate it. At the time it came out, of course, I was excited like most fans. I was also, though, old enough at that point to realize that doing something like Orko on screen was nearly impossible. So like I didn't hold it to the standards that a lot of people did. But I had a lot of the same gripes, and I have a lot of the same problems with it. And I know Andre can play off of this pretty well as a kind of like as a sci-fi action Conan-esque character in kind of the same sense that I enjoy Beastmaster 2 in a cheesy way. I do enjoy this movie for certain aspects and certain things. And I mean, let's be real. Frank Langella knocks it out the motherfucking park as Skeletor. And Dolph Lundgren looks perfect as He-Man. The cast is spot on. The rest of the cast is even perfect too, as far as that goes. But the story and all that kind of shit is not Masters of the Universe. As a generic sci-fi kind of thing, it's awesome. As Masters of the Universe, it fails on every fucking level outside of Skeletor. Andre? And Man at Arms. The guy playing Man at Arms is perfect too.
As for me, I wasn't aware of the existence of that movie until 1993. That day, I was browsing the local video rental store when I saw the cover in one of like those big box plastic covers that were all the rage back then. And I saw the cover and I instantly recognized that's a He-Man movie. And like my mind couldn't compute that something so incredibly awesome could exist. By the time I was way, way past He-Man, but that brought all the nostalgia of like a few years ago back with a vengeance. I saw on the cover that there wasn't going to be any Orko. That was a big thing. I already disliked Gwildor just looking at him right there because he was in the way between me and Orko. So I eventually was able to rent the movie and I see it at home, and it's one of the most disappointing experiences of my entire life. It was the lack of characters, it was the lack of familiar backgrounds, and worst of all is that they went to Dumpwater, Florida and had the story set on Earth. I felt so bad for Skeletor, who was one of the things I really liked about the movie, when he has this glorious parade in the middle of the night in Hicksville, middle of nowhere, and no one comes to admire his parade.
We can't afford New York or LA. Fuck that.
Yeah, oh my God, it's yeah. So I appreciate the movie for what it is, but I maintain that it was the wrong movie. It was absolutely no reason to shift the story to Earth. You could have just keep on filming it right there in the desert. It would have been so much better. I would have been okay with that.
Canon was really the main problem. Because they kept pushing and pushing and pushing for more and more bits to happen in modern Earth instead of it being on Eternia. The whole story kept getting changed. Mattel was
well, they had their own struggles at the time.
Yeah, the whole movie was like one of those movies that barely got made and barely got put out. When it did fail, it was like it killed. It just that was like She-Ra started the downward slope of He-Man, even though I will argue that She-Ra is a great character. And Cameron brought up Moses earlier. That's actually a better comparison to like She-Ra, because she comes in, she realizes that I'm not even gonna get into that thing, but like there's a video almost in that. But like, yeah, like it was the Masters of the Universe movie that killed the franchise. It was so bad that it did so horribly. They even had a toy line. They even had a toy line that was going to go along with it that never happened because of how bad the movie went. Yeah, it was bad.
He-Man, the brand was already dying at that time, but the movie killed it off. Like it finished it. That was the fatality.
Yeah, and you got to remember, this is right at the cusp of where Ghostbusters had kind of already come in. Ninja Turtles was on the horizon and about to come in a big way, plus Batman. So, like, He-Man was like, yeah. It was
on his last legs anyway. But yeah. And then Dan Ramos says for $10, thank you so much. Clerks is about a dead man reviewing his life, being haunted by his obnoxious friend, an old girlfriend, and 2 more ghosts outside his door. Everyone was a ghost. Retconned. You're welcome, Smith. No, that's not a bad idea. And then Troy Pacelli says...
It is like Dante's levels of hell. There you go.
Yeah. And Troy Pacelli says GLAAD can make their own effing film. Yeah,
right? No shit. Well, that's just it. It's like, it's not like there's not tons of movies about this already. And let's be real, fucking Tropic Thunder made fun of this shit already. Like, that's the whole point of Robert Downey Jr.'s character, is to make fun of this kind of shit.
And then Troy Pacelli says for $2, GLAAD. No, we got that one already. Sorry about that. And then we have Stephen Otten, who says Tom Unleashed coming this winter, rated R. Richard says for $5, what you guys are preaching is tolerance. What the LGBT mafia now want is acceptance. They won't stop till you prefer them.
Acceptance. Yeah, well, that's what you're saying. Yes,
exactly. It's beyond. It's not acceptance. It's beyond that. It's more than that.
It's more like, we can accept beyond tolerance. I accept that there are people out there who live this way, and I have no problems with that. I have no issues. It doesn't even bother me. What bothers me is when you tell me I should, consider or be attracted to something or someone, or something like a type of sex or someone I'm not. That's the thing that I don't like, is when you're telling me what I should do and how I should feel, when that was the whole point of the movement to begin with. And that's why I also bring up is most people that I know that are in the LGBTQ community, they hate this shit. They're like, it used to be that all we wanted to do was be seen as equal and accepted and not be treated like, we're outsiders and ostracized. We wanted to not be seen as our label. I didn't want to be seen as just a lesbian or a gay man or whatever, Instead, now the whole thing is not only they want it in their Twitter bios, if the latest trend was to tattoo that shit on their fucking head, they would. I've heard this come from people that are in the community themselves. They're like, they're so sick of it.
Yeah. And moving on. Rambam 3000 says 10 British pounds. I don't know what he said because it's empty here, so it must have been retracted, but thanks for the
we'll insert anyway. What Stanley says here, and Tom is worried that penis might be delicious. Yes, I know it might just be delicious. Yeah. So,
and Sean Carter says for $5, Hollywood used to be fun because it reflected culture via entertainment. Now it's trying to change our culture via propaganda. Yeah, we got that one. Pablo Papano says for $20, Tom, stop apologizing. You'll always be a phobe, no matter what you say, in Hollywood's eyes. They keep forcing trans characters into films to normalize it, even though less than 1% of the population. And then Rama says for 100 Indian rupees, thanks so much, might be tactless. But what if said HIV actor dies mid-shoot? How do they replace that person without offending GLAAD and Twitter, etc.? Oh, that's very easy. They'd go with someone that's on medication and is going to basically live out their normal allotted lifespan. With expensive medication today, you can do that as long as it's caught early enough.
Well, let me bring in another thing to this. Is look like that. Yeah, that's one of those things where that's something you would have to ask yourself if you were doing such, if you were that worried about having it be that fucking accurate. Because, God forbid actors actually do something like, act. Because let's be real. How easy is it would be? The pool of actors that are all these things that they're looking for is so small that the chances of you even finding someone to fit the exact, resume that you need is, or whatever word I'm looking for, it doesn't exist in most cases. You just don't have it. There's not a lot of actors that are, disabled or this or that or the other, because for certain reasons, it's not an easy thing to do, plus deal with a disability for one. And if you're dying of AIDS, I highly doubt that the last thing you're worried about is going out there and giving a good performance.
Yeah.
Unless you're Freddie Mercury, that is. I mean,
yeah, but again, that was then. Now you have medication, which means
and I get
you
that.
can afford it. It actually can be kept in check, and you can be relatively normal today.
But
so that's
I guess okay. Let me be like more forward with what I'm saying. A lot of these things that they're pushing for, unless you're watching a specific movie like Milk or Philadelphia, that deals with these things, most people don't bring this shit up on a daily basis, and or it shouldn't be part of the story because it has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. That's
yes.
why GLAAD wants to force it to be part of the story, specifically because it isn't part of daily conversation. That is the reason why. That's why they're doing it. That's the reason. And then moving on from there, let's see where we were. The only thing, Master Clockwork says for $10, the only thing that pisses me off is the double standard. A woman can play a traditionally male character, a person of color can play a traditionally white character, but heaven forbid it's the other way around. Yes, that door swings one way and one way only. This says for $5. I've been hearing rumors that Seth MacFarlane may be leaving 20th Century and join NBC Universal Animation. Tom, have you heard anything about that?
No, I wouldn't be surprised though if when his contracts are up that happens. I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised either. He's under Disney now.
Yeah, I was just going to say, people forget that Fox Network and Fox, the production company that makes all their shows and all that stuff, are two completely separate entities. And when they did the sale, the networks themselves were kind of spun off into their own completely different thing. And that's why they took the Fox name out of it, or at least they should have been the reason why they took the Fox name out of everything. And I thought it should have been the opposite, but that's just me. I'm not going to get into that whole argument just because I argue that the film side of Fox things has been around a lot longer than the television side of things. But regardless, yeah, that's all because of that. And I think that maybe once the contracts are up for like Family Guy and whatever else is still running besides Orville, that, yeah, it'll be done and over with. The other thing is, though, is Hulu is ran by a couple different companies, and one of them is Universal. So if Seth does own, like, Orville outright, like, I mean, there's nothing to say that he can't take it over to Universal either when it's said and done, and it might wind up on Peacock or something like that. But I don't know too much about it. I've heard enough rumblings, though, that they're happy with the situation they have with Hulu. It wasn't so much, it was kind of a choice thing more than it was because they didn't want to compete with having Orville on Fox, is what it really kind of boiled down to. Is that does that make sense, Andre? Or maybe you can explain it better than I can here, because a lot of people are like, oh, they're moving it to Hulu, that's bad for the show. The kind of thing I was getting more so is that them moving it to Hulu means it's not going to be on Fox Network, but it's still under Fox Studios. So it's because they're two different entities, and this way the competition doesn't have one of their shows. So
yeah, kind of. Of course, I don't know how well it's going to work on Hulu. We'll just have to wait and see with that. But that could be one of the reasons,
and I think
why he might walk away.
Well, there's precedence for it, because when we did all our numbers when Orville was on, Orville was doing just as well or better in secondary market numbers, or whatever you call it, the second viewings, or whatever they call the next day when you watch it on streaming and VOD. It was doing just as well or better in those numbers than it was when it was on the network. So I think this is a calculated move. Plus, being on Hulu and not on the network, they can get away with a lot more. And if anybody knows, Seth likes to push boundaries. So he's a smart businessman. So whatever he's doing, whatever moves he's making, I'm sure are for the best interest of him and his crew. Because he will. I don't think he'd ever leave anybody that works for his shows out in the dark. And if there's anything he can still do to keep Orville going, I bet he would. Other than that, I have no idea what he's got planned over there. I know he's doing all kinds of shit over there, so it wouldn't surprise me. I know that's the long answer. Sorry.
Yeah. And with that, let's go through the others here. Michael Strelitz wonders, Kamran still in the know or kicked out? Kamran is still in the know. He hears new information, stuff like that all the time, and he's working on new things. So he is still very much so there. But like everyone, he also has to fight to get every single project made.
Yeah, he's always got projects that are in and out of whatever. Like we can't get into specifics, but he's very much still in the industry.
Yeah.
So.
And here's a good one for you, Tom. Sugar Cartridge sent us another 50 Norwegian krona. So tusen takk nok en gang. Anyone seen 4K77? It's a 4K 35mm transfer of A New Hope. as seen in the cinema in 1977. What an amazing experience. Got to dig on the net to find it.
Yes, and if you do, I suggest you use Surfshark just to be safe. And
Yes.
use the
That's what Surfshark is for, or one of the many things that Surfshark is for. You need a good VPN when you go scouring for 4K 77.
And yes, you do use the code midnight if you do.
When ordering the Surfshark for a great deal.
But it's funny you said that.
It aside, Tom,
I said the exact same thing you did. It's like seeing Star Wars for the first time all over again. It reminds me of that trailer that we got promised from the special edition, only it's true. Because the movie has been through so much shit over the years, watching it in comparison to the 4K Blu-rays that just came out of the super duper special editions that Lucas finished back in 2013 or whatever it was, or 12 or whatever it was, just before the sale. Yeah,
I've lost track of how many editions
he has done 4 or 5 different.
I want to go with year because there's like 4 or 5 different versions by now.
McClunky is like the 5th version now. That's where we're at, right? But no, like watching it was like a breath of fresh air. It looks amazing. I don't care if there's a few pops and scratches here. I want them there. You know, it makes it feel real. The warmth is there. It feels like what I remember Star Wars looking like, and better than I could ever imagine. It's the same feeling I get every time I get a really great 4K copy of a new movie that they did a really good job with. Only this was done by fans. Because it's not available in any commercial way. Fans have culled together actual prints that are in really good quality. I think some of them came from like the UK and Japan and all over the place. And they put them together, and they got the right color timing together and everything. And they did true 4K scans, and they look amazing. They've gotten Star Wars and Return of the Jedi done, but they still haven't gotten Empire Strikes Back finished yet. So if you can get your hands on them and you've got the ability to watch them properly, they are brilliant. I mean, I can't say enough about them, and I can't thank the people who put the time and effort together. Because I mean, Harmy's versions are great. Don't get me wrong, and he did a lot, and he's still working on it to this day. And I think, honestly, the sad part is that, to use a line from Jurassic Park, this version's almost made his extinct, sadly. And I mean, I'm sure he knows that to a way, but this is the best we're going to get until they actually do a version from the original negatives. It's not going to get any better than this. They're not going to look any better. So, and they've made sure that they got all the different soundtracks available on them if you get the right ones. So, yeah. But if you're somebody who's not worried about the 4K bit, go ahead and get the Harmy editions or a lower res version of these. You won't be disappointed.
Yeah, there you go. And Mecha J says for $5, Kevin should have taken a page out of his character Silent Bob and kept his mouth shut.
Oh,
but indeed he should. And then Tom, you have to introduce Rod again.
Rod Thunderheart. Sounds like we need to get like Survivor to do a theme song for him. It's just like Rod Thunderheart, like that.
Yeah, that would be something. Anyway, he sent us a Pear Guy super sticker for $3 Canadian. So thank you so much for that. And Rude Artist says for $4.99. If you think Clerks 3 won't be woke, just rewatch the last Jay and Silent Bob movie, particularly the callback scene to Chasing Amy.
There's a whole thing though with Reboot. It's kind of a funny creature. There's a whole storyline that's making fun of woke, diverse character groups though, and there's a lot of other things and stuff that he's taking jabs at and that. And I get it. Some people didn't like it, and that's fine. Again, that movie makes me feel like there's two Kevins. But again, I don't know too many people have seen it. For as many people I know that have seen it, like it's a real split down the middle thing. They either just really love it and see what I see, or they feel like you do. So I can't argue with you on that.
Yeah. And then you have to introduce Rod one more time.
Rod Thunderheart.
And he says for another $5 Canadian, Tom, you're right. I don't go through bumping into 10 people who immediately say, hi, I'm gay and I have HIV. Life doesn't work that way. Grand Wasu 42 says for €10, this inclusive thing is BS. The Peanut Butter Falcon was not financed by Hollywood because they did not want to have an handicapped lead actor. Good indie movie. Hypocrites, but we know that already. And Hypergarver 2 says for $10, the activists don't want acceptance, they want superiority. People can walk around with their pride on full display, yet my Mjölnir gets sent to HR because it might be racially insensitive. And finally, Paul Elder says for $5, the movie Looker used the concept of full CGI actors to fulfill all roles needed. CGI characters can make any gendered and non-genders. And with that, I believe...
Well, we had a few more come in.
Okay, I take it back then. Tsukiyomi99 says, do you guys plan on doing a retrospective on Judge Dredd? Yes. Punisher? Yes. X-Files? No. RoboCop? Yes. Or the Kurosawa films? No.
I was going to say maybe on the last one, but yeah.
Well, if you want to go for it.
I don't know. I have some. If we do anything on Kurosawa, it might be more so the influences on modern cinema, but RoboCop is definitely a big yes. Obviously, Judge Dredd and Punisher. X-Files is a funky one. I don't think Andre and I are big enough fans to say yes to that one.
I'm not doing it. No way. If you want to go for it.
No, I've never been that big of a fan. I'm probably sacrilege on that because I've only seen scattered episodes, and the movies were the only things I've ever really seen, and I liked them. And I think the last movie was one that people are like, "Oh my god, it's horrible." So, like, I'm sure I would be the wrong person to do that. But I think Paulie's a fan, so I'll talk to Paulie on that.
Well, we can work with him then. But I guess same thing with me. I liked it fine at the time, but I just moved on. And Midnight Sun says, good deal on the VPN. I signed up.
Awesome.
You guys. Awesome. Brilliant.
And did we get that last
I hope you'll be happy because we genuinely use it and we're really happy. They're a pleasure to deal with.
Did you get the one from Paul Elder? I didn't remember.
Yes, we did.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Paul Elder.
Yeah. I just want to be sure we didn't miss any.
Yeah, I'm just doing. That would be embarrassing if we had, but we haven't. I think we are. I'm just going to do one final check here.
And I can tell you, there's a lot of love for RoboCop in the chat. I can tell you, not only will we get a proper RoboCop one, I can guarantee you, Andre will end up doing one. Insist on doing one where he does all the comparisons between RoboCop and Judge Dredd. I bet.
Of course.
He says it like I knew it. I knew it.
Of course I would. I mean, it's kind of like what we do are ultimate retrospectives, and you can't do an ultimate retrospective on RoboCop unless you bring up his Judge Dredd origins. And with that, we are indeed fully caught up.
And I do agree with super straight here, other than being super straight like me. Mark Hamill's a great choice, but yeah, he's basically doing the Joker voice from what I'm hearing, which it's just a lower version of it. He's doing it down here.
Actually, there is some history to that because one of the major influences on the future development on Skeletor was actually the interpretation in New Adventures of He-Man. Now, that's a series that kind of bombed instantly, but it brought two things to proceedings. One is that it brought in serialized storytelling, and the other was that it made Skeletor into more of a Joker-like character.
I hate the voice.
Yeah, ignore the voice. I'm talking where I hate the voice too, but it's more a matter of how he was written, and there was a lot of Joker in that. So in this sense, the going with the Joker himself, Mark Hamill, to do the voice, it's how well the execution is. That of course can be discussed, but it's kind of like thematically fitting.
You could have got Michael or me to do it. We do Skeletor better than Even Oppenheimer.
You probably both do. You probably both do.
Bumbling boobs.
Yeah, and White Knight also points out Andre should have to do a retrospective of RoboCop in cinema versus RoboCop in a live-action TV series.
Oh,
well,
wow.
of course, a RoboCop will have to
Wow.
retrospective. Will also have to at least reference the different live-action series, especially the Crime Directives one, which could have been great.
It could have been. I like how it started
it
out
wasn't.
and it went down the hill. Yeah,
and it has some of the worst and unfitting music, I should say.
Which is funny because I could get the soundtrack, but I'm just like a whole lot of nope on that one.
I do not mind the mariachi music in the slightest. The mariachi music on its own is fine,
right?
But mariachi music to score RoboCop just kind of didn't work.
Well, and honestly, I'm one of those that I actually like the music from both the first and second film. On the third film was just Basil coming back and doing the same thing. But I mean, how do you go that route? Like those two movies have just iconic music because even the second film does, even though Basil did such a wonderful job on the first one. But anyhow, moving on. Yeah, I think we are caught up on Super Chat.
We are caught up on Super Chats, so I would like to say thanks to Kamran for joining us today. Thanks to everyone who's been watching. Hit that like before you go. Remember to share this stream. And also, we will have another He-Man video coming out really soon. Actually, we'll have several over the next week here. Yeah, we have a couple. But one will be coming fairly soon.
Hopefully tonight, yeah. Tremors retrospective, and you never ever know.
I love me some Tremor. And D-Bud Martin says, Andre needs to do a retrospective on the Frankenstein movies. All of them, Universal and Hammer. You know what? I don't know that I will do one for all of them, but I will definitely do one retrospective that references all of them. And you can combine that Frankenstein retrospective with a drinking game and see who dies of alcohol poisoning by the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with that, hit like, hit share, check out Kamran's webpage, check out our later videos, subscribe if you haven't, and I believe it is time for some koalas in the rain.
It is.
Koalas in the rain, koalas in the rain, no fucks given, koalas in the rain, koalas in the rain, no fucks given, koalas in the rain.